Chapter 616. The next day, in the morning, the freshman district was exceptionally lively. The commotion from yesterday didn't disappear after a single night. Instead, it had brewed to the peak after an entire night. Almost everyone was talking about the two freshmen who had ascended the devil rankings. At the same time, there were also many people wandering around the freshman district, wanting to find the two of them. In the morning light, a series of hurried knocking sounds rang out. Yin Nuoxing, who was lying straight on the bed like a long sword, ended his meditation and slowly sat up. He rubbed his eyes in a daze and stared at the two girls lying over a meter away from him. He couldn't help but be stunned. When did these two lasses come in? Knock, knock, knock. Another series of hurried knocking sounds rang out from downstairs, causing Yin Nuoxing, who had just finished his meditation, to feel somewhat irritated. He didn't sleep for another night, and his mental state was haggard. What the hell? Stop knocking. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes and climbed up from a bed with extreme reluctance. His clothes were in a mess, and his hair was in a mess. However, when he wasn't feeling well, he couldn't be bothered to tidy himself up. After dragging his feet down the stairs, Yin Nuoxing let out a long yawn and rubbed his sleepy eyes. He walked to the door and pulled it open. The person who appeared behind the door was Mountain's coarse face. Other than Zhong Songbai and Lin Xin, there were a few other people. However, he wasn't fully awake and couldn't see them clearly. PFFF. Brother Yin, your clothes, tidy up your clothes. Did you just wake up? When Lin Xin saw Yin Nuoxing's half-exposed shoulders and sleepy appearance, he directly spat out a mouthful of saliva. Without the mask covering her face, she looked even more stunning. Lin Xion's heartbeat quickened and his face flushed red. I'm a big man, and yet I was woken up by you guys. It's already good that my hair isn't disheveled. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes and let out a long yawn. He then pushed the door open and turned to walk in. He said weakly, "Come in and talk. I'll tidy up." The few people at the door looked at each other for a while and then followed him into the small palace. After sitting down in the hall, Mountain, Zhong Songbai, and Lin Xin sized up the place and couldn't help but exclaim, "This place is really luxurious." Moreover, there's a very powerful energy array in operation. It's much more powerful than those free, trash, immortal arrays. This isn't the energy array of the Academy. If I'm not wrong, he should have brought it here himself, or he built it. Among the few people who had followed Zhong Songbai and the other two, the lady dressed in green and blue said softly. From the looks of it, she was the elder sister of the former, Zhong Songling, whom Yin Nuo had met yesterday. Built it himself. Could it be that Brother Yin is a magic array master? Mountain's eyes widened in shock when he heard this. I only know that it's much more powerful than the demonic arrays we use. Chuan Mu's expression was serious as he said softly. Not long after Yin Nuoxing went upstairs, he appeared in front of them again. Zian, who had also finished tidying up, also appeared with him. The two of them, who were dressed in casual clothes, were also incomparably stunning. Without their hats and masks, their exquisite faces were completely exposed, causing a flash of amazement to pass through their eyes. "Sorry to keep you waiting. What's the matter? Did something happen? Or did you come to drink tea?" Yin Nuoxing smiled. He took out a tea set from somewhere and personally brewed a pot of tea, handing it to Zhong Songbai and the others. Seeing that his three sisters were all there, he smiled and said, "Senior sister, senior brother. Something's happened. Something big must have happened, brother. To be honest, you scared me. You've just entered and you've already created such a crazy scene. You might have a lot of trouble in the future. Those seniors who were pushed down by the two of you will not let this matter rest." Mountain laughed bitterly. Did this guy not realize what kind of shocking thing he had done? Crazy? Seniors? What do you mean? Yin Nuoxing took a sip of tea and tilted his head as he looked at the few people. There was some confusion in his eyes, not knowing what he was talking about. Seeing that he was even more confused than them, Mountain, Chuan Mu, and the others were also dumbfounded. Did this guy not know what had happened? "Brother Yin, what did the two of you do yesterday?" Zhong Songbai couldn't help but ask. "We went to the Spirit Light Tower, but a rank 6 War God token is needed to enter. The War God token can be obtained from the War God Temple's Combat Strength Hall. We want to test it, and came back after the test. Other than that, we didn't do anything else. Yin Nuashing scratched his head, then frowned slightly. He also sensed that something was not quite right. That's right. The test in the Combat Strength Hall is linked to the Combat Strength rankings. Once someone is qualified to enter the rankings, it will be updated. Therefore, the two of you entered the rankings yesterday. Moreover, you entered an extremely high position. Chuan Mu said in a deep voice. Lin Xian's elder brother, Lin Kuang, also laughed bitterly and said, I knew it. How could a freshman who just came and be able to directly attempt to enter the devil rankings? What's more terrifying is that the two of you actually succeeded and even entered the top 40. It seems that the teacher in charge of the test didn't mention this to you. Enter the rankings? Top 40? Yin Nuashing and Xian were stunned. They exchanged a glance and hurriedly rushed out of the palace. Looking at their anxious expressions, Mountain and the others laughed bitterly. This matter had caused a huge commotion in the Farlight Academy, but the two of them, as the main characters, didn't know about it at all. Yin Nuashing and Zi Yin rushed out of the palace. As soon as they raised their heads, they saw the huge Sword Mountain peak. Not long after, they saw the 20th and 36th positions. They found the two of them and were immediately stunned. This is really going to be a challenge to the rankings. This is troublesome. They actually managed to enter the rankings. Yin Nuashing also laughed bitterly. The two of them had only gone to test it and obtained a War God token. Who would have thought that they would actually enter the rankings? Can this ranking be removed? Turning back to look at Mountain and the others, Yin Nuashing couldn't help but laugh bitterly. No, unless someone pushes you down. However, the 20th and 36th positions aren't as easy to drop as one would think. Zhong Songling shook her head, causing the two of them to laugh bitterly. However, I'm very curious. Why aren't your names engraved? Chuan Mu raised his head and raised his chin. He looked at the places where the names should have been engraved, but there were only a few question marks. This made him very puzzled. This was something that had never happened before. That was arranged by teacher, although I don't know why he did it this way. In the distance, a figure quickly walked over. The moment this person appeared, the surrounding temperature dropped significantly. Everyone turned to look and saw that this person was Guyu. The teacher he was talking about should be Elder Jin Shun. Teacher has taken care of your information. Yesterday, I overheard the two elders inadvertently revealing this information. Guyu stood not far away from the two of them. He took a deep breath and looked at the two of them indifferently. Uncle Chin arranged this. Yin Nuashing was stunned. However, he also understood that it wasn't easy to deal with his identity. After muttering to himself for a moment, he raised his head and said, Chun, where is Elder Jin Chen now? I'll ask him to remove our names. It's useless. As long as your name is on the combat strength ranking, the elders have no right to change it. Guyu shook his head, after which he continued, look at your tokens. After charging into the combat strength ranking, you will be rewarded with a lot of energy. I also want to see how much energy you two will receive after charging into the top 50 of the devil ranking. Upon hearing this, Yin Nuashing and Elder Jin Shun were stunned. With a clench of their hands, they took out the tokens of the High Light Academy and flipped them over. The few of them hurriedly went over to take a look and were stunned. 6 zeros. One had over 8 million, while the other had over 6 million. We became rich all of a sudden. However, I feel that giving us so much is useless. Yesterday, we took a small stroll in the Azure Cloud Pavilion and didn't see anything that we wanted. Seeing the 6 zeros, Yin Nuashing sighed softly. He turned the tokens around in his hand, as if he didn't care about it at all. Useless? Junior brother Yun, if you say this out loud, you'll be beaten into a pig's head. Lin Kuang laughed bitterly. The students of the Farlight Academy were all striving to obtain more energy values. They couldn't wait to exchange for everything in the Azure Cloud Pavilion. In the end, this little junior brother didn't care about anything. Oh, just nice. With so much energy, we won't have to worry about not being able to enter the Spiritual Light Pagoda. However, after giving it some thought, Yin Nuashing felt that the large amount of energy was still somewhat useful. They wouldn't have to worry about not being able to enter the spiritual light pagoda. Just as Yin Nuashing and the others were discussing, a ray of light shot over, after which it appeared in the air with a flash. The long-haired youth, emitting a cold aura from head to toe, coldly looked at the freshman below. An ice-cold roar resounded in the ears of the freshman. Where the two freshmen scram out. The ice-cold roar that contained anger descended from the sky like a thunderstorm, causing the surrounding space to tremble. Immediately, it caused quite a few freshmen to raise their heads and look at the figure that had appeared in the air. To be precise, there were two figures because there was another one that had shot over from the side in an instant. His bone-chilling gaze and berserk aura caused the hearts of the freshmen below to feel fear. "You come to find trouble? How fast? Look at these two people. They should be Yuan 20 and Yuan 35 on the devil rankings. They should be the two that you two have squeezed out." Chuan Mu raised his head and looked at the two people that were emitting terrifying auras in the distance. Lowering his head, he looked at Yin Nuashing and said, "Junior brother, what do you plan to do?" "I'm not interested." This kind of person who was squeezed out of his position by someone else and didn't try to fight his way back up, but instead came to find trouble with the person who squeezed out his position. He's either retarded or narrow-minded. Yin Nuashing faintly shot a glance at the two of them, after which he yawned and said, "It just so happens that I don't like to pay attention to these two people." Yin Nuashing stretched his waist and gave a soft laugh to Xian, who was quietly standing by the side. "Let's go, lass. We're going to the spiritual light pagoda." Seeing that he was really going to leave, Chuan Mu and the others could not help but bitterly smile. This junior brother was truly ferocious. That figure stood proudly in the air. His ice-cold eyes stared at the freshman below as he furiously roared, "Can't you hear my words? Where are the two nameless freshmen? Since they dare to squeeze us out of the devil rankings, they don't dare to show their faces?" Only then did the freshmen below react. So they were here to find trouble because they had been squeezed out of the rankings. However, the problem was that they did not know the two of them. "Senior brother, none of us among the freshmen know the two of them." One of the freshmen hesitated for a moment before taking a step forward and clasping his hands as he shouted. They did not know who the two of them were. "You don't know?" The two of them coldly laughed. Their voices were like rolling waves as they spread out. "I think they must have hidden themselves. Cowards. I thought that there would be some powerful characters among the freshmen this year, but they're all cowards. They must have cheated to get their spots." The cold ridicule of this fellow caused the complexions of many of the freshmen to turn ugly. Among them, there were quite a number of powerful freshmen. However, they were afraid of the strength of the two of them and could only endure it. Outside the small palace beside the lake, Yin Nuashing, who had put on her hat and mask, was about to fly in the direction of the spiritual light pagoda. However, when they heard this voice, they abruptly stopped in their tracks. Xian did not think much of it. However, when he turned his head and saw Yin Nuashing's gradually darkening expression, he sighed softly and took a small step back. He softly said, "Little star, have mercy. Killing is not allowed in the Far Light Academy." When Chuan Mu and Mountain heard this, they were stunned. When they saw Yin Nuashing's darkening expression, their hearts could not help but jump. Zhong Songling hurriedly advised, "Junior, don't be impulsive. The two of them have the strength of the 8th or 9th seal of the devil rank. Even if you can snatch their spots, you have just entered the academy and have a weak foundation. You should endure it for now." Yin Nuashing looked at her in astonishment. Soon after, she smiled and said, "Senior, thank you for your reminder. If there is a way to remove the two of us from the devil ranking, we don't mind enduring it. However, since such an accident has occurred, blindly enduring it will disturb my state of mind. To put it bluntly, I hate it. Therefore, it's enough for something like this to happen once. Before they do anything to annoy me, let me deal with it as soon as possible." Yin Nuashing grinned. The moment the last word left her mouth, she stomped her foot on the ground. After that, from 1,000 meters away, a gigantic flame pillar suddenly soared into the sky. The purplish-red flame pillar appeared very suddenly. The two seniors and the many new students didn't even have time to react. They only felt that the temperature of the world had suddenly risen by several hundred times. Then, a purplish-red light swallowed the two of them. The flame pillar shot straight into the sky, illuminating the entire Longguang Academy. Everyone slowly stopped and stared blankly at the flame pillar. Chapter 617. Yin Nuoxing indifferently looked at the fire pillar. There was not the slightest fluctuation in his eyes, as if he was doing something meaningless. Such a lazy appearance made Chuanmu and the others speechless. The energy contained in the fire pillar made even their hearts palpitate. TSK, TSK. There seems to be an incredible fellow among this batch of freshmen. Yesterday, he took the position of a senior, and today, he's showing off his strength. I heard that the two who were originally ranked 20th and 35th went to find trouble. One of them used the wood element, while the other used the lightning element. Looking at the situation, could it be that they were completely defeated? They were defeated without even seeing the person? Very powerful. In any case, I know that I wouldn't be able to block that flame for even a second. The students of the Far Light Academy couldn't help but be speechless as they looked at the fire pillar that soared into the sky. Their faces were covered in sweat. With this temperature, if they stood in the center of the fire pillar, they would have already been burned to ashes. The fire pillar didn't last for long. It only lasted for half a minute before it suddenly dissipated. Even the purplish-red light that shrouded the heaven and earth also faded. The extremely high temperature also slowly decreased. However, there was a huge hole left where the fire pillar was, and even the surrounding trees were burned down. Looking at the two pieces of charcoal lying on the ground like dead dogs, Yin Nuoxing sighed. He didn't use his full strength. The power of the divine flame was something that even gods feared. Using it to deal with these students was like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Senior sister, senior brother, I've made a fool of myself. Yin Nuoxing turned his head and looked at Zhong Songling, Guyu, and the others. He smiled and cupped his hands. The faces of Zhong Songbai and the others twitched. Even Chuan Mu and the others couldn't help wiping the cold sweat from their foreheads. Just where did this brat come from? Are you really a demon rank one? Even if you're a magic array master, this strength is a bit fake. Looking at the two people who were burned to ashes without being able to resist, Lin Kuei couldn't help swallowing a mouthful of saliva. Yin Nuoxing spread his hands. Not to mention the divine flame. He was able to control the power of space with the strength of a demon rank. This was already in the category of an inhuman. Only those who were familiar with him would know how terrifying the power he controlled was. We're going to the Spirit Light Pagoda. Senior sisters, are you going too? Yin Nuoxing turned around and smiled devilishly, bewitching people. When Yin Nuoxing's group arrived at the Spirit Light Pagoda, they saw that the gathering place was still packed with people. Even though they were prepared, they still couldn't help but be a little surprised. The flow of people in this place seemed to never stop. The moment they landed, Yin Nuoxing noticed that many gazes were focused on them. Then, they quickly turned to look at the huge Soar Mountain. Among the many people, there was only one person with fluttering, colorful hair that left a deep impression. That person's figure was very similar to the person wearing a black and gold half mask in front of them. Oh no! Yin Nuoxing felt that something bad was about to happen when she saw those red and green eyes. She couldn't help but stroke her mask. Yuanxi had once said that his long hair was shiny and colorful and could be seen from 10 miles away. She reckoned that he was the only person in the Yuanguang Academy who could do that. Oh, I look over there. Could that person be the 20th ranker on the devil rankings? That fellow who snatched the 20th ranker on the first day? That lass is really lively. If she grows up a little. But do freshmen have such powerful strength? I can't see through that fellow's rank. The upper limit of the Yuanguang Academy is devil ranked 3 seals. Could it be that she can snatch the position of devil ranked 9 seals with just the strength of devil ranked 3 seals? Hearing the voices in her surroundings, Yin Nuoxing couldn't calm her heart even if she wanted to. She clenched her teeth so hard that creaking sounds could be heard. However, she couldn't do anything about it. She really didn't have any male characteristics on her body. She couldn't even see her Adam's apple. Other than that thing that could show that she was a man, she could only say that she was reaping what she sowed. Ignoring the whispers and strange gazes, Yun Nuoxing walked straight towards the spiritual light tower. Elder Lu, whom he had seen yesterday, was also standing at the entrance. When he saw Yun Nuoxing walking over, Elder Lu's gaze also turned over. His aged eyes slightly narrowed, seemingly wanting to see through Yun Nuoxing. Just as Yun Nuoxing walked up the stairs, before she could say anything, a figure abruptly appeared before her, blocking her path. That young man's long hair fluttered despite there being no wind. His entire body was filled with surging vitality, and there was a look of anger on his face. The aura he emitted caused the people in the surroundings to be filled with shock as they hurriedly retreated. "You are the new student ranked 20th on the devil rankings?" A voice that contained a hint of anger slowly rang out. Wood elemental energy surged in the surroundings, causing even the trees not far away to sway. Under this pressure, the students who were retreating were unable to catch their breath as they scrambled to run away. "Ranked 30th on the devil rankings, Bai Fei. Please give me some pointers." The young man by the name of Bai Fei gave a furious roar as the wood elemental energy, spiraling around his body, suddenly erupted. Like a surging green wave, it smashed towards Yun Nuoxing in an earth-shattering manner. Within the green wave, one could see densely packed vines that were like long swords concealed within the wave. The wood elemental energy represented vitality and life. However, everyone could feel a sharp, killing intent radiating from it. Seeing how ruthless Bai Fei was right from the start, Yun Nuoxing was stunned for a moment. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she clenched her right hand. Blazing fire elemental energy rapidly condensed within her palm. Within the purplish-red flames, there were faint golden particles revolving around. "Stop!" Just as Yun Nuoxing was planning to send Bai Fei flying with a palm strike, a roar abruptly rang out, causing her to be stunned for a moment before she hastily dissipated the energy that she had condensed. Bai Fei also unwillingly curled his lips. However, he did not continue to attack. In an instant, the green wave dissipated into nothingness. Yun Nuoxing turned her head around and looked at the person who had spoken. Surprisingly, it was Elder Lu, who was standing at the entrance of the spiritual light pagoda. Seeing the furious expression on Elder Lu's face, Yun Nuoxing was stunned for a moment. "You stinking brats want to overturn the heavens, right? You dare to fight in front of this old man? Do you want me to ban you from entering the spiritual light pagoda? If you want to fight, scram to the battle arena and the Battle King stage." Elder Lu coldly snorted as he walked before the two of them and shot a glance at them. "Elder Lu, I didn't mean it that way. It's just that I got a little agitated after seeing the appearance of this new student. I'm sorry." Bai Fei's entire body quivered from a roar, and he hastily cupped his hands towards Elder Lu as a drop of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. Yun Nuoxing curled her lips and did not say anything. However, she also cupped her hands towards Elder Lu. She still had to put on an act on the surface. "If there's a next time, I'll ban you from entering the spiritual light pagoda for a month." Elder Lu flicked his sleeve and turned his gaze towards the surrounding students. His face could not help but darken as he roared. "What are all of you still standing here for? Why aren't you going in? If you feel that you've had enough time to train, I can help you adjust the difficulty." Hearing Elder Lu's roar, the faces of the pale-faced students became even paler as they cried out in fear. After which, they quickly rushed towards the huge golden pagoda with a flash. They were afraid that if they continued to stay here, the former would really adjust the difficulty of the trial. Bai Fei's entire body trembled as he shot a glance at Yun Nuoxing. Without saying a word, he also rushed into the spiritual light pagoda. Chuan Mu and the rest felt that it was a pity that they did not manage to see the fire pillar clearly. They thought that they would be able to see how Yun Nuoxing did it this time. After shouting at the surrounding crowd to retreat, Elder Lu looked towards Yun Nuoxing and faintly laughed. "You've come. Do you have a rank 6 war God token this time? Yin Nuashing smiled and nodded her head. With a flip of her hand, she took out the rectangular token that had a large 9 written on it. Rank 9 War God token. Kid, you're really surprising. Seeing the 9 words, Elder Lu was stunned for a moment. Subsequently, he could not help but laugh and said, "At first, this old man thought that there was a problem with the demon rankings. However, after seeing this, the suspicion in my heart has been dispelled." Hearing that, Yin Nuashing lowered her head and glanced at the War God token. Then, she turned her head and gave Chuan Mu and the rest a puzzled look. The War God token evaluates your strength based on your attacks. In other words, the War God token has already recognized that you have the strength of a Demon Rank 9 seal. As for the Demon rankings, other than using the War God token to test your strength, you can also take the initiative to challenge the people on the Demon rankings to replace their ranking. Zhong Songbai said softly. Therefore, there are quite a few people who believe that you managed to occupy the position by defeating the person who was originally ranked 20. Lin Xin said. Oh, then Elder, can I enter now? Yin Nuashing suddenly understood and cupped her hands towards Elder Lu, smiling. Go, go, go. Take it slow. Since this is your first time here, you should take it easy. After entering, you will be given a crystal. If you feel that the trial is dangerous, just crush the crystal and exit. I guarantee that you will be unharmed. If you come out dead, you will be heavily injured. You don't wish to be bedridden for several months, right? Elder Lu stroked his beard and reminded with a smile. Yin Nuashing nodded. Originally, she wanted to ask what was inside the Trial of Light. But after opening her mouth, she discovered that she was unable to say anything. Hence, she decided not to ask. In any case, she was about to enter. She could just watch by herself. Junior brother, be careful. Although your combat strength is comparable to a Demon Rank 9 seal, the Trial of Light is an all-round test. It doesn't only test your combat strength. You must be careful. If you really can't handle it, just retreat. It's not worth it to be heavily injured just for a single cultivation session. Zhong Songling took a step forward and reminded in a soft voice. MHM got it. Thank you, senior sister. Yin Nuashing smiled and nodded. We'll go in first. This time we must pass the 4th stage. Chuan Nuashing laughed and patted his shoulder. Then, her figure flashed, and she rushed into the spiritual light pagoda. Behind her, Zhong Songling and Lin Kuei also rushed in. Be careful. If you can't handle it, just give up. Zian walked forward and gently tidied up his clothes as she spoke in a soft voice. MHM, be careful. If there's trouble when I'm not around, don't fight with others. Yin Nuashing nodded. His words were, of course, referring to the trouble that might come knocking on their door. He was not at ease letting her act alone. Kid, go quickly. With this old man here, I won't let anyone mess around. Elder Lu could not help but roll his eyes when he saw that Yin Nuashing did not enter after so long. With a dry laugh, Yin Nuashing smiled at Mountain and the other two. Then, he turned around and rushed into the spiritual light pagoda. When he rushed into the spiritual light pagoda, a thin layer of light suddenly enveloped him. Then, the space in front of him slightly distorted. Yin Nuashing keenly felt a weak spatial energy that seemed to want to teleport him away. Seeing this, Yin Nuashing smiled faintly and carefully wrapped himself with the power of stars. Then, the light screen slightly shook. The token in his hand also emitted a faint light, and a precise 1500 energy value was deducted. When the energy value was deducted, his figure was also taken away by the light screen and disappeared. Chapter 618. Buzz. When Yin Nuashing disappeared from the spiritual light pagoda with the light screen, he felt the space around him turn fuzzy for a moment. Immediately after, a faint energy fluctuation abruptly appeared. The energy fluctuation felt extremely familiar to him, as though it was an aura of the same origin. Yin Nuashing raised his head and looked ahead. Looking at the crystal floating in front of him, he casually stored it away. After that, he cast his gaze into the distance, as astonishment surfaced in his eyes. What appeared before him was a vast hall. The walls were green and red in color, with many strange murals painted on them. A golden path was laid beneath his feet, leading straight to the front. At the end of his line of sight, there was an open door, and behind the door was a spiral staircase. The entire space was filled with resplendent golden particles. These resplendent golden particles were extremely berserk, as they rapidly scuttled about in the space. In this place, there was no other energy except for the extremely dense light element. Within this large hall, there was no other figure. From the looks of it, the light screen had transported him here. However, everyone was transported to an independent space and wouldn't be affected by it. The trial of light is divided into 12 stages. Every stage has a different method of obstruction. However, no matter what, as long as you pass through the door, you'll be considered to have passed. After climbing the stairs, you'll be able to reach the second stage. After entering the spiritual light pagoda, Yin Nuashing received some information, which made him ponder. The conditions for passing seemed simple, but the obstruction might be so strong that it was beyond his imagination. This golden path seemed to be very long, but with his strength pushing the light element to the limit, it would only take a few tenths of a second to pass through it. My light element is resonating with the light element here. Raising his hand and looking at the light particles circulating around his body, Yin Nuashing had a pensive look. If people with other elements were to cultivate here, they would be suppressed by the light element, which would increase their cultivation speed. Yin Nuashing clenched his fists. Looking at the red crystal floating before him, he recalled Elder Lu's words and stored it away. Raising his foot, he took a step forward. He didn't directly rush over. If it was so easy to pass through, then this so-called trial of light would seem like child's play. When he raised his foot and walked into the large hall, the light element that filled the sky seemed to have a reaction as it slowly condensed together. Thereafter, under Yin Nuashing's gaze, it slowly condensed into golden figures of humans and beasts. The surging light element stirred the energy in this place into an extremely chaotic state. Gradually, those human figures and demonic beasts filled the entire large hall, both the sky and the ground. Every single one of them had their eyes on Yin Nuashing. Has the trial of the first stage begun? Yin Nuashing looked at the thousands of people and magical beasts and took a deep breath. He clenched his fist, and the power of the stars gathered to form a huge sword. Then he stretched out his left hand and waved at the thousands of people and magical beasts that had gathered. Roar! It seemed that Yin Nuashing's provocation had stimulated the tens of thousands of elemental creatures. The ear-piercing roar resounded through the large hall and poured into his mind. His figure froze for a moment, but returned to normal in an instant. Yin Nuashing took a deep breath, opened his mouth, and roared. He also condensed a huge star sword in his hands. Carrying the two huge swords, he charged into the army of light elements. The surging star power surged out like a tide, and the two swords violently swept out in front of him. Chi! The huge sword swept out and scattered the hundreds of giant beasts in front of him, turning them into a pile of brilliant light particles. However, they didn't completely dissipate. Those light particles slowly condensed in midair, and in less than half a minute, they condensed into hundreds of giant beasts. An endless army, and each one of them has the strength of a fifth seal of the demon step. Even a sixth seal of the demon step would have a hard time dealing with them. Moreover, they are light elements. Yin Nuashing saw the giant beast that had condensed once again and smiled faintly. After muttering the last 3 words to himself, he suddenly swung his sword behind him. There was nothing there at first, but when the huge sword swung, a human figure suddenly appeared and was struck by the huge sword, dissipating into light particles. You're fast, but I'm also someone who possesses the light element. Yin Nuashing faced the sky and roared. His surging fighting spirit soared into the sky. He stamped his feet on the ground, and his figure rushed into the endless army like a golden arrow. The explosive power of the 2 swords surged in the air, and those golden giant beasts and human figures were slapped into the sky and then fell to the ground. It was as if there was a rain of humans and beasts. Heavenly Moat, chaotic sword formation, Yun Nuashing shouted loudly and brandished the two huge swords with both hands. His four limbs were fluttering rapidly, as if he was performing a gorgeous sword dance. The power of stars condensed on the two swords, and with every slash, chop, and flick, it transformed into huge sabers, spears, swords, halberds, axes, hooks, and forks that flew in all directions. Yun Nuashing didn't use his full strength right from the start, because he knew that this was only the first stage. He wanted to pass through the seventh stage, and not the first, third, or fourth stage. He needed to save some strength to deal with the later stages. He could advance and retreat freely in this army of light elements. Every time he swung his sword, hundreds of giant beasts and human figures would dissipate. This was under the condition that he didn't use a divine artifact. If he used a divine artifact, he might be able to destroy all the creatures here with a casual swing of his sword. Not enough, not enough. Still not enough. The golden radiance heavily fell on Yun Nuashing's back, and his leaping body lightly trembled. He didn't even look behind him, and with a loud laugh, a huge spear rushed out from behind him, piercing through the giant beast that had ambushed him from behind and sticking it into the wall of the main hall. Under this kind of attack, Yun Nuashing discovered a mysterious place. If he stopped, the countless army would also stop. If he retreated, a portion of the giant beasts and human figures would retreat. But if he moved forward, the endless firepower of the army would cover the sky and cover the earth, smashing down on him. The deeper we go, the denser the light elements are, and the things in the surroundings have the strength of the sixth seal. The huge sword that had been swung thousands of times paused. Yun Nuashing sized up the situation around him, and his gaze was fixed on the door less than 100 meters in front of him. He sighed softly and muttered to himself, "Let's end this." After saying that, he slammed the two starry swords in his hands together, and then raised them high above his head. The surging power of the stars seemed to be limitless as it gushed out and landed behind him, quickly condensing into 12 huge swords that were more than 100 meters in length. Heavenly Moat, world-slaying array, Yun Nuashing lightly shouted. The two swords in his hands fiercely slashed down, and the 12 enormous swords followed his movements and fiercely slashed downwards. Wherever the edge of the swords passed, even the air was split into two. Before the enormous swords arrived, the compressed air condensed into an enormous air cannon, and with a bang, it smashed downwards, smashing open a huge pit that was several meters large on the floor of the hall. Those golden beasts and human figures were all blasted into pieces, and after that, the 12 enormous swords also fell from the sky. Rumble. The 12-sword cheese burst out the instant the huge swords fell and rushed forward while roaring. Along the way, they left huge sword scars on the floor of the main hall, and the endless light elemental army in front of them was also torn apart by the berserk sword cheese. When Yun Nuashing saw that the sword cheese had torn apart the army of tens of thousands, he wrapped his body in light elements and flashed through, rushing through the door. Turning his head, he saw that the endless army outside the door had put down the weapons in their hands and were looking at him through the door. They didn't chase after him and were densely packed in the air, looking at him in a daze. Turning his head to look at the endless army, Yun Nuashing frowned but didn't think too much about it. Turning around, he stepped onto the spiral staircase and rushed up. After running for a while, Yun Nuashing passed through the door and saw another main hall, one that was exactly the same as the first floor. But when he stepped into the main hall, he didn't see the endless army. Raising his head, he saw dazzling golden dark clouds condensing on the roof of the main hall. From time to time, they would flicker with powerful rays of light, as if a sun was flickering behind the dark clouds. Lowering his head, he looked at the walls of the main hall. When he stepped in, the walls also lit up with some rays of light. At this time, the rays of light had already stopped and turned into several huge golden arrays. These were light elemental arrays, and the entire space was filled with berserk energy. Yun Nuashing frowned and raised his head to look at the golden thunderclouds. He raised his foot and took a step forward. Suddenly, The golden thunderclouds in the sky moved, as if an ancient giant beast was roaring, filled with the might of the world. Boom! The dark clouds churned, and in the next moment, a huge golden lightning bolt tore through the dark clouds and space. Then, with lightning speed, it fiercely bombarded Yin Nuashing below. The golden heavenly lightning struck Yin Nuashing, causing his body to tremble slightly. He felt a slight stinging pain, but his expression changed slightly. Then he actually grinned. I thought it was really lightning elemental, but it turned out to be a lightning attack formed by light elemental condensation. Yin Nuashing laughed. Moreover, since it was an energy attack, there was no need to be afraid. He had this spiritual, divine body, and was the least afraid of energy attacks. No matter how much energy came at him, he could swallow it all in one gulp. The arrays on both sides of the walls slowly came to life at this moment. Beams of dazzling golden light shot out, but when they touched Yin Nuashing, they all disappeared, leaving behind a golden light that wrapped around his body, making his aura even more powerful. He wasn't affected at all, and couldn't even be stopped for a moment. Phew! This energy attack should be able to seriously injure an expert of the 8th seal of the devil rank easily. Yin Nuashing sighed softly, looking at the dense, heavenly lightning and the golden light beams that came from all directions in the hall, like an aurora. His cheeks couldn't help but twitch. Even a person at the peak of the devil rank wouldn't be unscathed under such a dense and saturated bombardment. It didn't take long for Yin Nuashing to reach the stairs of the 2nd floor, and then ran up the stairs. When Yin Nuashing appeared on the 3rd floor, his body obviously paused for a moment, and his eyebrows twitched slightly. Gravity. Yin Nuashing looked at the hall that looked exactly the same as before. There were no changes in the hall, no golden thunderclouds, and no arrays, but he felt an astonishing gravity. No, that's right. That's right, the 1st and 2nd floors below are supported by gravity, but when I reach the 3rd floor, the gravity here is stronger and more obvious. Yin Nuashing muttered to himself. Then, he raised his head and smiled bitterly. Each floor has a different level of difficulty. The gravity here can't affect me, but what about the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th floors? Thinking of this, he felt a headache, and the pain went to his brain. Chapter 619. The hall was completely empty, with only the powerful gravitational force descending from the sky, trying to crush the space. Yin Nuashing took a step forward. The 2 starlight great swords in his hands didn't disappear, and were still tightly gripped in his hands. Just as he took a step forward, he stopped. This was because he saw that in the space in front of him, there was an additional person, or rather, there were 9 people aligned. When he turned around, he could see these 9 people. Looks like it's not completely empty. Yin Nuashing faintly smiled. These 9 figures were all dressed in golden robes and held huge golden weapons in their hands. These 9 people were clearly condensed from the light element. Defeat us, and you can advance. The person at the front raised his head and glanced at Yin Nuashing. His deep and hoarse voice reverberated in the hall, startling Yin Nuashing. Weren't they just dummies? He originally thought that they were humanoid creatures condensed from the light element. He didn't expect them to be able to speak. Good. Yin Nuashing smiled and nodded. The instant he said the word good, his figure instantly disappeared. The first person was also startled. Light elements surged out, but before he could react, a starlight greatsword pierced through his body and stabbed into his chest. Only then did the word end, so powerful. You also wield the light element. The first person raised his head and glanced at Yin Nuashing. He smiled faintly and clapped his hands. Soon after, he said, "Go directly to the 6th person. The first 5 can't stop you." Yin Nuashing stared blankly for a moment, then nodded. He didn't pull out the starlight greatsword, but let it dissipate. Soon after, it condensed in his hands again. He cupped his hands towards the first person and ran towards the 6th person. The first 5 didn't stop him and only nodded at him. His footsteps stopped 10 meters in front of the 6th person. The 6th person raised his head and frowned when he sensed Yin Nuashing's valiant fighting intent and the light element that was about to condense. Clang! Just as he furrowed his brows slightly, the huge golden axe in his hand was suddenly placed horizontally in front of his chest. Just as he stopped moving, a huge starry sword swept past the huge axe, and a series of metal clashing sounds were heard. Yin Nuoxing looked at the sixth person in shock. This was the first time his advance had been blocked. As a light elemental wielder, it's naturally important to make the first strike. But if the first strike fails, you'll be putting yourself in danger. The sixth person said indifferently. His hands that were holding the giant axe trembled slightly, and his body suddenly disappeared from a spot. He appeared beside Yin Nuoxing, who had yet to put away her sword. The giant axe slashed down with a golden light. Just as it was slashed out, one could see that the axe had already hit the ground. Clang! Another metal clashing sound was heard. The sixth person, who was slashing down with his huge axe, only felt a tremendous force coming from the axe. That force was so great that he couldn't hold onto his huge axe, and it was sent flying. The energy within his body surged, and the light element he condensed became unstable. It took only a split second for him to regain his senses. He already saw that Yin Nuoxing had placed the starry sword across his neck, causing him to open his eyes wide in astonishment. Turning his eyes, he saw that on the right side of Yin Nuoxing's body, where his huge axe had just slashed down, there was a thin, yet incomparably solid light shield. It was this shield that had blocked the huge axe. You've won. Go to the ninth person. Perhaps he can give you some pressure. The sixth person shook his head with a bitter smile. His golden eyes took a deep look at Yin Nuoxing. Wasn't this guy just a demon rank? How could he be so monstrous? Yin Nuoxing cupped his hands and arrived in front of the ninth person with his huge sword. Before he could stand firm, he felt a blur before his eyes. Then, a feeling of danger pressed down on him like a huge beast, causing him to be startled for a split second. That light shield of his subconsciously blocked his chest. Then, light elements surged, and a magical array condensed in an instant. Suppress. Clang. Clang. Boom. When the light shield appeared and the magical array condensed, a huge hand rapidly appeared on the light shield. An extremely powerful force pressed down on the light shield, causing it to ripple. This attack didn't stop. The huge golden spear streaked across the sky with a dazzling golden light, piercing towards Yin Nuoxing's abdomen. A huge starry sword also instantly appeared in its trajectory. It took a long time to describe, but when the voice fell, the 8 people all turned their gazes over. When they saw that the ninth person had been nailed to the wall by Yin Nuoxing's sword, they all shuddered violently. In that split second, the two had exchanged at least 12 blows. You've won. Go up. When the ninth person saw that he had been nailed to the wall, he was somewhat dazed. He only remembered that he had slapped 3 times, chopped 3 times, and stabbed 3 times a row. Then, he felt a blur before his eyes. When he came back to his senses, he was already in his current state. Phew, that was close. I'm really glad that I don't have a light elemental opponent in the real world. I've only fought 3 battles here, and in 2 battles I was extremely tense. Sometimes, I didn't even know if my feelings were right or wrong, and could only rely on my feelings to fight. My brain simply couldn't react in time. It's really tiring. Yin Nuoxing wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and bitterly smiled. The battle between light elementals is like this. 50% of the people who came to the 3rd floor were blocked by the first person, 20% by the 6th person, and the remaining people only had a 1% chance of slipping away with some luck, the 9th person said calmly. Then he smiled. Congratulations, your use and understanding of the light element is extremely brilliant. I reckon that even the 4th floor won't be able to stop you. Then I'll count on your auspicious words. Yin Nuoxing smiled as he waved his hand, dissipating the huge star sword. Then, he turned around and walked through the door, stepping onto the stairs leading to the 4th floor. When Yin Nuoxing stepped onto the 4th floor, the spiritual light pagoda suddenly lit up with an extremely intense radiance, lighting up the sky, causing the entire spiritual light pagoda to turn into a flowing golden color. Such a miraculous scene caused the people outside the spiritual light pagoda to stop. They raised their heads and looked at the scene. After being stunned for a moment, they seemed to have thought of something. When Elder Lu saw this scene, he was also stunned for a moment. Then, he softly smiled. It seems that someone has reached the 4th floor. I wonder who it is. If he's able to pass the 4th floor, he'll be the 2nd person in the academy. Hearing Elder Lu's words, Xian and Mei mouth faintly flickered. She took a deep breath. She didn't know why, but she felt that the person who had reached the 4th floor should be Little Star. Little Star, do your best. After saying that in her heart, Xian took another deep breath and looked straight at the huge golden door in front of her. She didn't know how many students were drooling and staring at her just by standing there. If it wasn't for Elder Lu sitting at the side, there would have already been people coming over to strike up a conversation with her. The 4th floor was still a vast hall. It was exactly the same as the 3 floors below. However, there was only one thing here. It was a huge golden array that was 100 feet long. Array? When Yin Nuoxing saw this array, she was immediately stunned. She wasn't scared silly. Instead, she was inexplicably happy. She was so happy that she wanted to laugh out loud. What he was best at, other than weapons, was arrays. His talent in arrays, which even she praised endlessly, wasn't just for show. After being stunned for a long time, Yin Nuoxing rubbed her eyes. When she was sure that she was still looking at an array, she looked at the information in her mind. Finally, she couldn't help but laugh out loud. Crack or destroy the array, or withstand the attack of the array for the time it takes to burn a stick of incense. Is there a better choice? Obviously not. After laughing for a while, Yin Nuoxing took a step forward and arrived in front of the golden array. Raising his head, his evil spirit eye began to slowly operate. Small arrays appeared in front of his eyes, then overlapped and condensed together, floating in front of his 2 eyes. There were also 2 palm-sized arrays sandwiched in between the many small arrays. After seeing through the array with a glance, Yin Nuoxing began to analyze. An advanced demigod array can release and condense a large amount of energy. It can lock onto the enemy. Once the enemy is locked onto, the follow-up attacks won't miss. If it's used together with other arrays, it can also lock onto the enemy. If you want to crack it with brute force, you'll probably need to use an attack comparable to a demigod 9th cycle attack. If you want to crack it, you'll need to use an attack comparable to a demigod 9th cycle attack. If you want to crack it, you'll need to use an attack comparable to a demigod 9th cycle attack. If you want to crack it, you'll need to use an attack comparable to a demigod 9th cycle attack. Isn't it better to use brute force? After finishing her analysis, Yin Nuoxing raised her head in astonishment. Soon after, she smiled and shook her head. How could she use brute force to crack it? Arrays were her pride, so she had to treat them carefully. If she knew that she had used brute force to crack a demigod array, she'd beat her to death. Then I'll slowly crack it. It'll only take a minute. Let's see if I can secretly learn it. Yin Nuoxing rubbed her head and chuckled. The array that had condensed in front of her slowly dispersed, floating towards the 300-meter large array. While Yin Nuoxing was leisurely trying to crack the formation with a playful attitude, outside the spiritual light pagoda, in the sky, countless sounds of wind breaking rang out. Many figures appeared near the spiritual light pagoda, and even some teachers and elders had come. Originally, the spiritual light pagoda was a place that gathered a lot of people. Now that it was emitting golden light, it attracted the attention of countless people. Not long after the spiritual light pagoda appeared, many people flew over. At this moment, there was already a sea of people. With a single glance, there was only a dense mass of people. Judging from a reaction of the spiritual light pagoda, who managed to pass the 4th level, it has been a long time since someone went up there. Although those in the top 30 of the Devil Rank Combat Prowess rankings have all managed to ascend to the 4th level, that was under the circumstances where their lives were on the line. Very few people would really fight to the death with the person guarding the 3rd level. Someone looked at the people in the surroundings of the spiritual light pagoda and couldn't help but be speechless. Hey, Do you guys think that the person in the first place wants to attempt to ascend to the 5th level? That's why such a commotion is happening. How is that possible? The elders have said that it's impossible to pass the 5th level unless one is at the initial god rank. Look, there are quite a few people ranked at the top of the devil ranking. The 7th ranked Lin Kuei, the 8th ranked Chuan Mu, and the 10th ranked Zhong Songling have all come out. Glancing outside the spiritual light pagoda, they saw Chuan Mu and a few others. They had come out after sensing the change in the spiritual light pagoda. Right now, they were standing beside Elder Lu, looking at the glowing spiritual light pagoda with a heavy expression. Did you miss something? Look to the side. The 2nd-ranked Zhao Wenyao and the 3rd-ranked Ding Mingyu are both here. Do you think that the person with the most monstrous talent is really attempting to ascend to the 4th level? Could it be that he has already entered the demigod rank and wants to attempt to ascend to the 5th level? Demigod rank? I wonder when he will be able to reach that level. Some people sighed. Those who were able to enter the Highlight Academy were sufficient to prove some things. The majority of them were people with extremely good talent, but when facing this level, they still felt that it was very far away. Where's Junior Brother? Beside Elder Lu, Zhong Songling and Zian stood there. The two of them had different auras and attracted the gazes of the majority of the people here. Although one of them was wearing a hat, it didn't stop people from wanting to get close to her. Zhong Songling glanced at the open door, but no matter how she looked, she didn't see Yun Nuoxing's figure. She couldn't help but look at Zian. I have no idea. Maybe she's still cultivating inside. Zian shook her head lightly and pulled her hat down even lower. Even her willow eyebrows were pressed under the hat. The surrounding gazes made her feel uncomfortable. Seeing this, Zhong Songling gave Chuan Mu and the others a look. The latter and the others understood and took a step forward. It looked like they were taking a step forward, but they blocked many of the gazes that were looking at Ziyan. There were many people coming and going, causing the spiritual light pagoda to be filled with 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside. Even the sky wasn't spared. The hubbub of voices rang out unceasingly. Almost half of the people here were guessing who the person who lit up the spiritual light pagoda was. From the top ranker of the devil ranking to some elders, everyone was guessing who it was. Buzz. Just as everyone was discussing spiritedly, a dazzling golden light erupted from the spiritual light pagoda, shooting into the sky and transforming into a pillar of light. That brilliant golden light caused countless people to turn their gazes over as their hearts surged with emotions. Elder Lu couldn't be more familiar with this and was the first to suck in a breath of cold air. The 4th level has been cleared. The 4th level has been cleared. Elder Lu stared at the golden pillar of light, his eyes filled with disbelief. At this moment, the golden pillar of light illuminated the entire Far Light Academy. Countless people raised their heads, and it was as if they saw a golden sky. The 4th level has been cleared. It's about time for him to come out. Back then, that monstrous genius from the Far Light Academy was also sent out with heavy injuries the instant he passed the 4th level. He didn't even get to see what the 5th level looked like. But look at that light. There's no sign of it dimming. In fact, it's even brighter. That person seems to be challenging the 5th level. MHM? Numerous whispers rang out as everyone turned their gazes over to the spiritual light pagoda. Their eyes narrowed. That's right, the 4th level was already drowned out by the pure golden light. And on the 5th level, a small dot of light had appeared. This meant that not only did that person pass the 4th level, he even successfully entered the 5th level. At this instant, those rankers on the devil rankings all furrowed their brows. To others, this might mean that someone had ascended to the 5th level and wouldn't affect them. But to them, this meant that they, the rankers on the devil rankings, had encountered a great enemy. Compared to the shock of the crowd, Zian was even more certain that that person should be none other than Little Star. However, Mei Mao didn't relax in the slightest. On the contrary, she felt even more nervous. The tempering test required him to be able to pass the 7th level, which was the 7th level. This was only the 5th level, and the further one went, the more difficult it would be. His test had just begun. Chapter 620. Yin Nuoxing, who was in the spiritual light pagoda, naturally didn't know that there were so many people watching from the outside. If he knew, he would immediately give up and inform Xian to use the array to teleport away. But in the outside world, he was trying his best to break through the levels while the people outside were watching curiously. Uff! No wonder that guy who was ranked first on the devil rankings died instantly when he passed the 4th level. If this array is activated, it would be fatal. For activations, for eruptions, for layers of killing intent. However, it won't be a threat to me. Patting his hands, Yin Nuoxing glanced at the empty large hall, laughed softly, and stepped onto the stairs to the 5th level. However, when he walked up to the 5th level, an extremely frightening pressure suddenly descended from the sky, causing his expression to change slightly. His usually straight back could not help but sink at this moment. However, he immediately recovered. Previously, when he was in the 6 paths of reincarnation, he was pressured by the God Emperor level Black Beast using a Heaven Taboo level gravity array. The gravity he felt now was not as strong as it was back then. The gravity of the 5th level is more than 10 times stronger than the 4th level. According to this calculation, the 6th level is 100 times stronger than the 4th level. Then, the 7th level should be 1,000 times stronger. It should be the same strength as the Heaven Taboo gravity array that I had to endure. Yin Nuoxing silently calculated in his heart and took a deep breath. If he continued to calculate, it would really be terrifying. I wonder what the test of the 5th level is. It can't be just gravity, right? Looking at the hall before him, the hall of the 5th level was dark in his eyes. Perhaps it was because of the pressure here, but he felt very suppressed. Taking a deep breath, some sweat appeared on Yin Nuoxing's face. A formless pressure, a formless energy wrapped around his body. Huff. I can guess a little. Let's give it a try. Feeling the pressure, Yin Nuoxing let out a long breath and swallowed his saliva. He raised his leg and took a step forward. Boom! The pressure that suddenly descended was like a mountain or a star field descending on his body, causing Yin Nuoxing's body to shrink. His face turned pale. The gravity suddenly increased by 100 times? That's not right. It's not gravity. It's the pressure of a god who has condensed gravity. Gritting her teeth, Yin Nuoxing's face was drenched in sweat. She stubbornly raised her head and looked at the space in front of her. She took 2 deep breaths, and there was a determined and bitter smile at the corner of her mouth. What kind of joke was this? Was she going to walk the rest of the way like this? Me? Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes and suddenly took a 2nd step. The force of this step caused the ground to rumble and his expression to turn sluggish. He felt as though he had walked into a place filled with elasticity. It was as though he was pressing down on a rubber ball with all his might, and the ball that was stuck in was about to pop out his fingers. There was a force in front of him that was pushing him away, not allowing him to move forward. I don't believe it. Yin Nuoxing fiercely clenched her fists and gritted her teeth. Her eyes were bright as if they were about to burn. She stared fixedly at the door in the distance. She lifted her right foot and suddenly took a step forward. The silent pressure became even heavier. Why? It's not like I haven't felt the pressure of a god emperor before. The resonance of all the divine weapons in my body was able to resist it. This is only a god's son. The pressure of a first-stage god. Why? Yin Nuoxing roared and panted like a cow. He didn't understand. This was only the pressure of a god's son. Why couldn't he withstand it? There were so many weapons hidden in his body that were enough to kill gods. Divine weapons? That's right. Where are my divine weapons? However, just as he finished roaring, he was stunned. That's right. Where were his divine weapons? He hadn't used any divine weapons from the moment he entered. Even now, he still hadn't used any. Thinking of this, Yin Nuoxing lowered her head, trembling. She pulled up her sleeves and revealed the light patterns on her forearms and the back of her hands. However, she discovered that the light patterns had lost their luster, as though they were just colorful tattoos. The divine weapons had been banned? Yin Nuoxing murmured in shock. His palms suddenly touched his face, but he didn't feel the half-mask on his face. He remembered that he had come in wearing a mask, but it was gone now. Yin Nuashing took a few deep breaths. He suddenly raised his head and roared. His feet continuously stepped forward, and he suddenly rushed more than 10 meters away. The sudden increase in pressure made him feel that the scene around him was distorted. Moreover, he also smelled the aura of the light element. Since he had the light element, the pressure of the light element shouldn't be so strong. However, the pressure this time was even stronger. All the favorable conditions have all been sealed? Yin Nuashing gritted his teeth. Every time he said a sentence, he took a step forward fiercely. The sweat on his face flowed down his face and dripped onto the ground. However, he didn't stop at all. Otherwise, it would quickly form a puddle on the ground. Roar! Yin Nuashing's face turned red. It was obvious that he had used up all of his strength. Under that huge pressure, he let out a roar and clenched his fists. There was a muffled bang from his back, and 6 colorful wings that were as dazzling as glass suddenly appeared. This caused Yin Nuashing's aura to expand a bit. The huge 6-colored wings created a gust of wind that made him feel the pressure around him weaken a bit. 110, 111, 112, 113. Yin Nuashing's footsteps came to a stop. The power of the stars that he boasted about, under such extreme consumption, actually showed signs of being exhausted. It seems that other than using a divine, profound skill or overloading a divine weapon, very few people have tried to exhaust the power of the stars like this. Yin Nuashing gritted his teeth and raised his head with difficulty. Drops of sweat gathered into a stream and dripped down his chin. Looking at the distance that was still far away, he took a deep breath and said, "This is only 1/3 of the way. 114, 115, 116, 117. Yin Nuashing roared hysterically and fiercely took step after step forward. He only stopped when he felt that the crystal was really about to dry up. He took a deep breath, and with a slight thought, an energy talisman between his eyebrows exploded. Rolling power spread throughout his body. However, just as he thought that he would be able to recover to his peak state, the enormous energy suddenly disappeared. What? It's gone? Yin Nuashing was shocked when he felt the power in his body suddenly disappear. That energy talisman should have been able to recover all of his power. However, at this moment, he had only recovered 1/10 of it. Furthermore, he tried to detonate a few more energy talismans, but he still didn't recover even 30% of his power. Mother Vastress Cur, this is the rhythm of playing me to death. Yin Nuashing grit his teeth and smiled bitterly. He wiped the sweat on his forehead with his palm and was startled for a moment. He realized that his body was emitting bits of glazed light. When he focused his eyes, his meridians were emitting glazed light and golden light. The two colors were blending together. Yin Nuashing was a little surprised. His meridians were originally golden because of the spirit receiving divine body. The glazed light was the result of the glazed divine crystal's transformation. He didn't expect that under such heavy pressure, his meridians would react. He could feel that his body had become a little lighter, but it was only a little lighter. The heavy pressure was still enveloping him from all directions. Roars came one after another, as if they were telling of that person's pain and the oppression in his heart. He should have conserved some of his strength, but with every roar, he took another step forward. Perhaps it was the obsession in these roars that was squeezing out his strength. Su Ming, Su Ming, Su Ming. The scene in front of him was getting darker and darker. That was because his strength and energy had almost dried up. He was about to faint, but he had persevered and walked to this place. The pressure of the God Sun level burst out completely. Not only his energy, but also his mind and soul were under extreme pressure. Even breathing felt like his lungs were filled with lead. Boom! Suddenly, there was a loud explosion. A terrifying purple-red flame soared into the sky and resisted the roaring pressure. Yin Nuashing's eyes burst out with shocking light. Rays of scarlet runes appeared on his skin. The light that was the mixture of scarlet, glazed, golden, and purple red was dazzling and terrifying. He didn't look like a human anymore, but more like a monster. Roar. A roar that didn't sound like a human's voice came from his mouth. The 6 colorful wings emitted a glazed light. The purple-red flame around Yin Nuoxing's body turned into a sea of fire that spread out as if it wanted to burn down the hall. The runes on his glabella continued to explode, supporting him to burn the star power and his soul. While he was burning all of his power with all of his might, the lines of the receptive spirit divine physique on his body actually slowly lit up. However, Yin Nuoxing, who was burning his power crazily, didn't notice it at all. His right hand opened and loosened, as if he was pinching something with all his might. However, nothing appeared at that place. Roar, 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 roar. A roar like a tiger's roar shook the entire space. White hair with blue stripes grew crazily on Yin Nuoxing's arms. Even his handsome face had hair. His fingernails elongated like tiger claws. Red wings appeared on his shoulders. This feature seemed to have fused with Feng and Whitey. Crack! As he clenched his right hand, Yin Nuoxing heard the sound of something breaking. It seemed that something had escaped his control. A 2-meter-long purple-black giant sword rushed out of his body and appeared in his hand. The hand that was covered in blue and white hair grasped it. The moment he grabbed the netherworld ruined sword, Yin Nuoxing felt the pressure on him drop drastically. Without the suppression of a divine weapon, he wouldn't have been able to control such a huge amount of energy. If it weren't for the glazed mirror and the glazed divine crystal that he had used to transform his meridians, his body would have exploded and he would have died. Roar. However, he didn't have time to care about that. With a roar that was mixed with the cry of a phoenix and the roar of a tiger, Yin Nuoxing raised the dark ruined sword and stepped forward. The light elements wrapped around him and flashed into the depths of the hall. Level 5. Level 5. Level 7. Yin Nuoxing looked up to the sky and roared. His goal was the 7th step. How could he stop at the 5th step? Layers of roars echoed as he stepped on the billowing sea of flames and sword aura. He rushed through the door in the most violent manner. The moment he rushed through the door, the monstrous pressure also disappeared in an instant. Buzz. Boom. Outside of the spiritual light tower, numerous figures were watching with shocked gazes as the power of the stars soared into the sky. It spread, diffused, and formed a huge star field in the sky of the Farlight Academy. Specks of starlight adorned the sky, as if night had descended in an instant. At this moment, many people saw the sun, moon, and stars in the sky. It was as if they saw 2 different skies. Those who looked up at the star field couldn't even move their eyes. Those who were observing the scene at a close distance gasped as if they were convulsing. They wanted to suppress the shock in their hearts, but when they looked at the starry sky, they couldn't calm down at all. As for those who were far away in other parts of the academy, they were puzzled. They didn't know what was happening. Chapter 6:21. In the sky, the sun, moon, and stars were all present. It was as if there were 2 skies coexisting. That resplendent star field was brilliant and incomparably gorgeous. Swoosh! However, that resplendent star field only lasted for a few seconds before disappearing. Along with it, the golden light pillar also disappeared. Even the spiritual light pagoda fell silent. Elder Lu's body was trembling violently. Breaking through the 5th step meant that he could step into the 6th step. Although it was only for a few seconds, it was possible that he had crushed the crystal when he was about to break through the 5th step. Otherwise, he should have come out in an instant. Who is it? Elder Lu fiercely turned his gaze to the entrance as his breathing became hurried. He was in charge of managing the matters of the spiritual light pagoda. Therefore, he knew that there wasn't a single elder who would come here today. Moreover, the power of stars that erupted from the 5th step was the manifestation of the energy within that person's body. Within the academy, there wasn't a single teacher or elder who possessed the power of stars. The difficulty of the 5th step is something that only those who have stepped into the initial divine realm or the divine sun realm will be able to pass. A student has passed. This is too crazy. Elder Lu stared at the entrance of the spiritual light pagoda. Who exactly was it? Elder Lu wasn't the only one who wanted to know the answer to this question. Countless people in the sky and on the ground were nervously looking at the entrance. Even Zhao Wenyao, who was ranked second on the devil rankings, and Ding Mingyu, who was ranked third, were staring at the entrance. Could it really be him? Or could it be the doing of a teacher or elder of the academy? Countless gazes were nervously and curiously looking at the entrance of the spiritual light pagoda. Since the phenomenon had disappeared, that person should have come out. At this moment, they wished that they could rush into the spiritual light pagoda to capture that person. Elder Lin. Suddenly, an exclamation sounded from an unknown place, causing everyone to hurriedly turn their heads and look towards the source of the sound. They saw a group of people quietly appearing in the densely packed sky. There were quite a number of people in this group whose hair had already turned white. There were 4 figures at that spot. They were actually the 4 new student guides. That kind-looking Elder Lin was also among them. Even elders have been alarmed. This is incredible. It seems like even the elders are paying close attention to what happened in the spiritual light pagoda. When the students saw the arrival of that group of people, they couldn't help exclaiming in surprise. These people who were usually nowhere to be seen had actually come out. Old Lu, which little fellow is making a ruckus? The middle-aged man with Elder Lin placed his hands on his hips and shouted at Elder Lu of the spiritual light pagoda. Then, he stared at the entrance of the spiritual light pagoda. I'm asking a ghost. So many people enter the spiritual light pagoda every day. Previously, I asked you to research how to see what's happening in the spiritual light pagoda, but you didn't do it yourself. Elder Lu rolled his eyes, causing the middle-aged man to laugh loudly. He didn't ask anything else. Do you think it's him? That little fellow who is ranked first on the devil rankings? Elder Lin laughed as he stared at the others. Ling Feng? That guy accepted a demigod-level mission and went out. I don't know if he's back yet. The 5th level of the spiritual light pagoda is purely a test of one's body and strength. Even if Ling Feng has the ability to kill a god, it can't prove that he could persevere for so long under the pressure of a god's son. He even risked his life to pass the 4th level. That's true, but I do hope to see Ling Feng appear. The group of elders chattered. Only Elder Lin and the other 3 were silently exchanging glances. No one knew what they were thinking in their hearts. As the thousands of people waited, time ticked by. It wasn't until 10 minutes later that a figure suddenly appeared behind the door. Everyone's eyes narrowed in shock as they stared intently at the figure. When Xian saw that figure, her heart pounded violently. Her jade-like hands were clenched tightly as she silently chanted in her heart, "Little star, you must not come out. If you come out now, you'll be in big trouble." Everyone stared intently at the figure that was slowly walking out. They even held their breaths and stared intently. Then, the figure slowly appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Why is it him? That was a skinny figure. He wore green clothes and had short hair that draped over his shoulders. His face was extremely handsome with a slightly sharp chin. From the side of his face, there was a strange feeling of laziness. It was as though he wasn't interested in anything. The 4th ranked on the devil rankings, Xian Yuan. Everyone exchanged glances as they sucked in a breath of cold air in their hearts. Those in the top 10 of the devil rankings were the true influential figures of the Farlight Academy. There were many new students in the surroundings, and they were even more shocked. However, what made them puzzled was that he was the one who passed the 5th stage of the Spirit Light Pagoda. Xian Yuan's aura is still at the peak of the devil rankings. An elder faintly said with a frown. Clearly, he didn't believe that Xian Yuan was the one who passed the 5th stage. Xian Yuan, who had just walked out of the Spirit Light Pagoda, slowly opened his eyes. When he saw the few thousand pairs of eyes staring at him with shock and doubt, he was stunned and almost jumped back. After calming down, he turned his gaze to the side and saw Chuan Mu and the rest. He couldn't help narrowing his eyes as he softly asked, "Brother Chuan, why are there so many people here?" "You're asking me? Shouldn't I be asking you this question? You scare me to death. You actually did something that even Shui Lingfeng couldn't do." Chuan Mu's eyes widened as he faintly glanced at Xian Yuan. He couldn't help but sigh. Seeing that the fourth ranked on the devil rankings had become so monstrous, he felt a great pressure. What? What do you mean? Xian Yuan was stunned. He glanced at Chuan Mu before looking at the few thousand people in the surroundings. He was a little confused. Don't say anything. Did you pass the 5th stage of the Spirit Light Pagoda? Elder Lu rolled his eyes and asked. 5th stage? I've always been cultivating in the 2nd stage. Xian Yuan was baffled. What 5th stage? Why did he say something he couldn't understand after cultivating? Was he muddle-headed from his sleep? It's not him. It's actually not him. Didn't I say so? Xian Yuan is only at the peak of the devil rankings. How could he pass the 5th stage? Hearing that, the surrounding people were startled again. Some were astonished, some sighed, while the majority of the elders heaved a sigh of relief. That scared them to death. They thought that this little fellow of the devil rankings had really passed the 5th stage. When Xian saw that the person who came wasn't Yin Nuoxing, she also secretly heaved a sigh of relief. However, this sigh of relief didn't last for long. She felt a warm hand holding her palm, startling her. However, when she felt that familiar touch, she also relaxed. She turned her head and, as expected, she saw Yin Nuoxing standing at the side, silently smiling at her. Little star, Xian sweetly smiled, then quietly transmitted her voice. You passed the 5th stage, right? How was it? Yin Nuoxing stared blankly. He didn't say anything. With a bitter smile, he helplessly shook his head and replied, Little girl, you're so smart. You exhausted all your strength just after passing the 5th stage and didn't even reach the stairs of the 6th stage before coming out. It's very difficult, very difficult. The Spirit Light Pagoda sealed my divine tool, leaving me with less than 20% of my strength. Therefore, to be honest, I don't have the confidence to reach the 7th stage. Brother Yin, when did you come out? Lin Xian, who was looking left and right out of boredom, saw Yin Nuoxing and Xian laughing and talking about something. He couldn't help but stare blankly and ask. I was here just a moment ago. Oh, right after that person came out, I came out. Yin Nuoxing smiled and pointed at Xian Yuan. As early as when he crushed the crystal before he came out of the Spirit Light Pagoda, he sensed a large amount of life energy outside. After the latter came out and attracted a lot of attention, he used the teleportation array to come to Xian's side. Oh, you came out. How was it? Did you die instantly? Chuan Mu also saw Yin Nuoxing and laughed heartily, patting his shoulder with his palm-sized palm. Sigh, don't mention it. This Spirit Light Pagoda is so abnormal. I didn't even reach half of the 1st stage before I crushed the crystal and came out. It hurts so much. Were those things condensed from light essence? TSK, that speed was terrible. Yin Nuoxing showed a pained and speechless expression and started to complain. Hearing him, Chuan Mu, Zhong Songling, and the others smiled bitterly. Although you have a war god command of the 9th step, you are still a 1st-ranked demon. How could not hurt? You are only a 1st-ranked demon. Entering the Spirit Light Pagoda for the first time, it would already be pretty good if you could reach half of the 1st stage. Lin Xian patted his shoulder, consoling him. If he didn't connect him to that person who broke through the 5th step, he wouldn't have been able to connect them. Right? What is everyone doing here? Don't tell me there's something to eat? Yin Nuoxing blinked his beautiful big eyes and asked Zhong Songling and the others with a smile. Food. The 3 of them were speechless. Glancing at him, Chuan Mu said helplessly, There is a mysterious powerhouse in the Spirit Light Pagoda who broke through the 5th step. A strange phenomenon appeared in the Spirit Light Pagoda, and a pillar of starlight reached the sky, attracting everyone here. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing's heart skipped a beat, and he heaved a sigh of relief. Luckily, he was cautious and didn't walk out first in front of so many people. However, after thinking about it, even if he was the first to walk out, it didn't seem to be a big deal. He was just a 1st-ranked demon. No one would believe that he could pass the 5th step that required the strength of a god's son. Hearing their conversation, Elder Lu stroked his beard. He also didn't connect Yin Nuashing with that mysterious student who broke through the fifth step. After all, the latter's strength was too low. Even if he had a war god command of the ninth step, it was still impossible for him to pass. Looks like he is still in the Spirit Light Pagoda. Stroking his beard, Elder Lu sighed. Let's go, we will go back first. It hurts so much. Yin Nuashing grimaced in pain as he rubbed his waist. With a bitter smile, he waved his hand and said to Chuan Mu and the others, "Wait a minute." Just as Yin Nuashing was about to leave, a light voice rang out from behind him, causing him to stop. Turning his head, he saw Xian Yuan narrowing his eyes as he looked at him. He was stunned for a moment before he turned around and cupped his hands. "Greetings, senior. I wonder what's the matter?" Xian also clenched her fists and glanced at Yin Nuashing with unease. Only those who were familiar with him would dare to connect that person to Yin Nuashing. Could it be that this person also saw through something? Xian Yuan glanced at him and frowned. After that, he said a sentence that caused everyone to vomit blood. The new student ranked number 20 on the devil rankings. Are you a man or a woman? PFFF. Many people in the surroundings coughed out a mouthful of blood. Even those elders had black lines on their faces. You put on such a solemn expression just to ask this question? Yin Nuashing's face twitched. He couldn't help but roll his eyes and wanted to curse out loud. However, he still controlled his temper and cupped his hands as he softly replied, "I'm a man, Senior Xian Yuan." Oh! Upon hearing this, Xian Yuan glanced at him and drew in a light breath. He glanced at Qin Wentian's flawless face a few more times before glancing at his body. After that, he asked, "Since you are a man, why do you have to dress up like a woman?" A vein popped out on Yin Nuashing's forehead. He really wanted to use his right hand to grab Qin Wentian and hang him up in the air, slapping him while cursing, "Damn, it's not my fault that I look like a woman. Forget it. Since you are a man, it's even easier to discuss. Your name, you don't have a name, right? Although I don't know what methods you use to get yourself ranked number 20 on the devil rankings. Since you were able to stand there, you should have the strength to prove it. Maybe one day, I will look for you to spar." Xian Yuan glanced at him. After that, he calmly turned and walked out of the pagoda. That arrogant figure caused many people to have fear and worship in their eyes. Yin Nuashing's face twitched. He inclined his head and stared at the peak of the gigantic sword. After a while, he found Xian Yuan's figure. Ranked number 4 on the devil rankings. I request to be removed from the devil rankings. Yin Nuashing helplessly covered his face. Chapter 622. The thousands of students and elders present were nervously staring at the spiritual light pagoda. However, a publicly acknowledged expert ranked 4th on the devil rankings, as well as a new student ranked 20th on the devil rankings, a publicly acknowledged cheater, walked out. It seemed that the two of them wouldn't be able to pass the 5th stage of the spiritual light pagoda, which caused many people to sigh and patiently wait. It was as though they had to see the true face of that person tonight. Seeing Xian Yuan leave, Yin Nuashing sighed again and bid farewell to Chuan Mu and the rest. They planned to stay here and wait for the appearance of that person. When Yin Nuashing found out about this, he rolled his eyes and walked towards the freshman area, wanting to go back and rest. However, before Yin Nuashing and Xian could walk out, a figure appeared before them, or rather, appeared in the direction they were heading. Yin Nuashing speechlessly raised his head, only to see a young lady dressed in a silver robe. The lady had a tall figure, and although her cheeks were slightly thin, her oval face was a rare beauty. Her skin was as white as snow, her brows were picturesque, and her hair was as smooth as silk. What was most surprising was that this lady's main mao was actually silver in color. Her silver eyes and ink-black hair clashed with her silver robe, causing her to emit a cold aura that kept people 1,000 miles away, giving people the feeling that they could only look at her from afar and not touch her. The gazes of the crowd also swept over to the lady dressed in silver robes, who had remained silent all this while. A trace of adoration flashed in their eyes, but it was quickly replaced by fear. Seeing that she had blocked Yin Nuashing's path, some astonishment surged in their eyes, with some gloating in their eyes, thinking that she was going to find trouble with Yin Nuashing. However, with so many elders present, there shouldn't be any trouble. At most, she would be beaten up. When Yin Nuashing saw this lady, he was also slightly stunned, with admiration in his eyes. He quickly glanced at her before retracting his gaze. A silver robe, it made him think of Xianyin. He wondered where that last was now. A trace of reminiscence flashed in his eyes before returning to normal. Yin Nuashing faintly smiled and said, "I wonder why senior sister Ding is looking for me." Ding Mingyu wasn't surprised that he was able to recognize her in an instant. The devil rankings on the giant sword had the silhouettes of all the experts on it, and one would be able to remember them after seeing them twice. "I wish to test your strength." An indifferent and cold voice suddenly sounded out. Yin Nuashing only saw the figure in front of him becoming slightly blurry. Holding onto Ziyan's right hand, he waved a gentle gust of wind to push her away. In the next moment, fire essence condensed in his right hand, and star energy also rapidly condensed. His evil spirit eye instantly opened, and after catching sight of Ding Mingyu's figure, his right hand that was burning with fire essence fiercely slapped towards her right hand. Bang! The oppressive slap brought about a gust of air waves. Blazing flames and lightning interweaved, causing a gust of wind to blow, causing the large trees by the side to sway. Those gazes that were gathered on the spiritual light pagoda were startled and turned over. Seeing Ding Mingyu making a move against Yin Nuashing, there were quite a few people who revealed gloating expressions. Is the overly arrogant freshman finally going to be taught a lesson? Looking at the situation below, the old students couldn't help laughing. However, after a brief moment, they saw that Yin Nuashing hadn't retreated a single step, causing astonishment to flash across their eyes. He actually managed to block it. Everyone was dumbfounded. Ding Mingyu was an expert at the peak of the devil rank, yet this freshman was actually able to block her without retreating a single step. However, after seeing the two hands that were stuck together, they were startled for a moment. Then, many burning gazes that were filled with jealousy instantly shifted to the colorful-haired youth that caused them to gnash their teeth in anger. "This fellow, if you want to fight, then just fight. Why do you have to be so intimate?" Yin Nuashing indifferently looked at the slender little hand that was touching his right hand. Seeing that Ding Mingyu had stopped, he said, "You're not fighting anymore?" Ding Mingyu glanced at him and retracted her little hand. Taking a step back, she said in a soft voice, "I'm not fighting anymore. It's just a test. I'm not as tasteless as some fellows who find trouble with freshmen." Hearing that, Yin Nuashing was startled for a moment before faintly smiling. Ding Mingyu's bright eyes stared closely at Yin Nuashing as she casually asked, "Do you have any intention of joining any forces?" Yin Nuashing was startled for a moment. After pondering for a moment, he gently shook his head and said with a smile, "For the time being, I haven't thought of joining any forces. I'm used to being alone and am not used to being in a crowded place, including the academy. I might choose to be an invisible person. However, the matter of you rushing up the rankings will attract a lot of trouble. I'm afraid you can't be an invisible person anymore, let alone two people rushing up the rankings." Ding Mingyu frowned slightly, glanced at Ziyan, and softly said, "This." Yin Nuashing's cheeks twitched as he bitterly laughed. "Seems like it." Ding Mingyu quietly looked at Yin Nuashing with her bright eyes, then looked towards Chuan Mu and the others who were still standing at the entrance of the spiritual light tower. Her clear and cold voice slowly sounded, "Are you very familiar with Chuan Mu and the others?" "I can't say that I'm familiar with them, but I do know them. Their younger brothers are also new students. When I came in, I chatted with them for a bit. I felt that we could get along well, so I wanted to try getting along with them," Yin Nuashing said. Ding Mingyu's bright eyes trembled slightly when she heard this. Immediately, she gently inhaled a breath of air, as though she was gathering her courage. A moment later, her pretty eyes looked at him with determination as she softly said, "Rain Dream welcomes you to join us." Yin Nuashing was startled, as he did not expect that someone would invite him. He subconsciously wanted to refuse, but Ding Mingyu beat him to it and said, "Don't be in a hurry to answer. I can see that you don't like trouble and don't like to get involved in anything. So, what I mean is if there comes a day when you need help, you can come to our rain dream. I'll do my best." Yin Nuoxing rubbed his cheeks and said with a bitter smile, "Senior sister, you can see that I'm very strange. Are you trying to sell me a favor? You're very smart and have great potential. So, perhaps there won't come a day when you'll be of use to me." Ding Mingyu nodded and said in a clear and cold voice, "Then, thank you, senior sister Ding." Hearing that, Yin Nuoxing smiled and nodded. No matter what, she still wanted to rope him, and even though she knew that he was alone and weak. He did not know if she was just saying it, but on the surface, she was still someone he could make friends with. Familiarize yourself with the academy. It will be time for you to perform in the freshman feast in 1.5 months. Junior brother, I'll go back first. Ding Mingyu lightly shook her head and bowed slightly to Yin Nuoxing. Then she walked towards the forest as if she did not care about the spiritual light pagoda. Nodding slightly, Yin Nuoxing watched Ding Mingyu leave. He waited until her figure disappeared into the forest before he retracted his gaze. He felt his palm being held by a small and warm hand, so he turned his head. "Little star, have you taken a fancy to your senior sister?" Xian looked at him with a smile and fanned Mei Mao. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes at her. Holding her small hand, he walked towards the freshman area, leaving behind a group of jealous gazes that were about to ignite with fire. Yin Nuoxing and Xian had just returned to the palace in the freshman area. They wanted to lie down on the bed and not move. However, not long after lying down, they heard a knock on the door from downstairs. This knock was gentle and rhythmic. It was not as strong as Dashin's knock in the morning. However, when it landed in Yin Nuoxing's ears, it still made the veins on his forehead bulge. He abruptly jumped up from the bed. "Mother of Asterisk her, does our little palace have so many guests? They came in the morning, and now they come again. Can't they just lie down for a while?" Yin Nuoxing cursed as he walked out of the room. He did not even put on his mask. Xian, who was lying on the bed and stretching her small waist, also pursed her red lips when she saw him walk out. She muttered under her breath and stood up lazily from the bed. Then she walked out with light steps. With a belly full of anger and displeasure, Yin Nuoxing quickly walked to the front of the door and fiercely pushed the door open. Just as he was about to shout, he was startled when he saw the dozen or so people. Standing at the front was a young woman, dressed in a snow-white robe that wrapped around her exquisite and delicate body flawlessly. A golden crown-shaped headdress was neatly worn on her head, and her beautiful face was filled with a solemn expression. Her small red lips were slightly pursed, and her beautiful eyes were bright and full of expression. When she saw Yin Nuoxing, she was also startled for a moment. Xian, who had just come down from upstairs, was also slightly stunned when she saw the person. Her jade-like hands covered her red lips, and there was an unconcealable surprise on her face. "Jun Luo, Mr. Yin?" Yin Nuoxing and the lady in the white dress spoke at the same time. The dozen or so people behind the ladder also widened their eyes in astonishment. Originally, they had recognized Xian on the devil rankings and wanted to pay her a visit today. Who would have thought? Silence. The air completely froze at this moment. The scene was frozen. At this moment, they were both stunned and surprised. A few minutes later, in the small palace, Yin Nuoxing and Xian were brewing tea. Yin and Jun Luo were also helping by the side. After a few minutes, they sat down and took a sip of tea. Then, they heaved a long sigh of relief. Yin Nuoxing placed the teacup down and placed his hands naturally on his lap. His colorful eyes looked around. When he saw that the people he brought from the Mystic Dragon continent were all safe and sound, he was slightly happy, especially when he saw that other than the profound Sky Sovereign and the others, the group of young people were still around. He was a little surprised. He originally thought that after bringing them to the myriad god world, they would all go their separate ways. He didn't expect that they would gather together and be inseparable. "How have you been in the past 2 years? Have you adapted well? Life in a myriad god world." Yin Nuoxing smiled. "In the first half of the year, I've been running around in Xiaoguang City. I was very tired, but also very happy. It was only 2 years ago when I entered the Farlight Academy that I could be considered to have a firm foothold. Now, I've even created a faction called Mystic Dragon. After 2 years of development, many powerful old students have joined. Yi Daofeng lightly smiled. Yesterday, we heard that a new student had entered the devil rankings. We immediately recognized Sister Xian, but Brother Yun. Yin rubbed her cheeks and couldn't help but let out a dry laugh. You can't recognize me, right? It's fine, I'm used to it. Yin Nuoxing covered her face and smiled bitterly. She had also been reborn by the seven-colored Aurora celestial pond. She had also become more beautiful. Xian still had her original silhouette. Yin Nuoxing, on the other hand, seemed to have changed his face and become a different person. Speaking of which, I have yet to formally thank you. Jun Luo, he took a sip of tea and put down the teacup. Mei Mao stared at Yin Nuoxing and smiled sweetly. She gracefully extended her lily-white hand and said with a smile, Mr. Yun, thank you for bringing us to see this wonderful world. If it weren't for us, perhaps you would have already arrived in the myriad god world. I only brought you along in passing. Yin Nuoxing smiled and waved his hand. We didn't have much confidence that we could use that method to come here. Teacher said that a drop of water should be repaid with a gushing spring. Even if it was just a casual gesture, we still have to thank you, Mr. Yin. Jun Luo smiled faintly. After coming to the myriad god world, she seemed to have changed into a different person. In the past, Yin Nuoxing had never seen her smile in the profound dragon continent. Seeing her insistence, Yin Nuoxing also smiled faintly. He extended his hand and lightly grasped that jade-white hand. He smiled somewhat embarrassedly and said, Don't call me Mr. Yun. Just call me Nuoxing or whatever you like. Jun Luo smiled and nodded. Speaking of which, after seeing so many experts in the myriad god world, I also know what kind of expert Big Brother Yun is. It makes me yearn for a higher realm even more. Yi Ding drank a mouthful of tea, then poured another cup for Yin Nuoxing and Xian. He grinned and said, Me? Forget it. Let's not talk about me. I'm a very strange variable. I can't see the future, and I don't have a past to speak of. There's nothing worth talking about. At the mention of himself, Yin Nuoxing's expression became slightly gloomy. He was somewhat dispirited. He waved his hand and changed the topic. Jun Luo, and the others saw that his expression wasn't too good and were somewhat astonished. However, as intelligent as she was, she didn't ask too much and very cooperatively changed the topic. Yin Nuoxing talked to Jun Luo, and the others about the matters of cultivation, and also shared his views of the myriad god world in the past few years. He really liked this group of people. From them, he could feel a miracle. In a short 2 years, they had all broken through from the immortal rank to the devil rank. This kind of talent, even in the myriad god world, was top-notch. The group chatted, drank tea, and laughed heartily. They couldn't help but cry from homesickness. They messed around for an entire night, and only left when dawn approached. Yin Nuoxing looked at this group of people and shook his head with a smile. Well, in any case, we're in the Farlight Academy. If there's time in the future, we'll meet again. Chapter 6:23. The next day, the main character of the phenomenon in the Spiritual Light Pagoda didn't appear. Several thousand students and elders waited bitterly outside the Spiritual Light Pagoda for an entire night. In the end, they didn't even manage to catch a glimpse of that person. When dawn arrived, they gradually dispersed. Many people were disheartened. Those who came out of the Spiritual Light Pagoda also said that they didn't manage to catch a glimpse of that ferocious person who was able to reach the 6th level. As the main character of the Spiritual Light Pagoda didn't appear, the gazes of those people turned back to the devil rankings. Most of them were paying attention to the 2 mysterious freshmen on the devil rankings. This was the first time such a thing had happened in the Farlight Academy. There were even letters of challenge flying to the freshman area, inviting Yin Nuoxing and Xian to fight. However, the 2 of them would usually ignore them. In fact, the majority of the freshmen didn't even know where they lived. Only Mountain and the other 2 would come here every day, On the surface, they were here to be guests, but in reality, they were here to borrow the array. Yin Nuoxing also found it funny and didn't reject them. However, when he saw the basket of letters of challenge they brought, his handsome face turned black. The people who sent the letters of challenge ranged from the top 200 to the top 20 of the devil rankings. 40% of them were looking for Xian, while 60% were looking for Yin Nuoxing. And when Yin Nuoxing saw the basket of letters of challenge, he burned them in front of Mountain and the other two. I wanted to keep a low profile. If it wasn't for the Battle God token, I wouldn't have done those things back then. Who would have thought that it would actually connect to the devil rankings? Yin Nuoxing only sighed in response. Half a month after the incident in the Spiritual Light Pagoda, Guyu informed Yin Nuoxing that Elder Jin Shun had returned. The latter, who was deep in thought, seemed to have thought of something. He thanked Guyu and rushed out of the palace, heading towards the Golden Forest. Xian also hurriedly followed behind him. After rushing into the Golden Forest, Elder Jin Shun, who was leisurely drinking tea, stood up when he saw the newcomers. When he heard Yin Nuoxing's intentions, he was also stunned. The Spiritual Light Pagoda has sealed the divine weapon, so you can't use it. Jin Shun frowned slightly when he heard this. Spiritual items like weapons could be said to be the greatest means of receiving a divine body. If it was sealed, it would be equivalent to sealing half of the body's power. Moreover, if it was the case with Yin Nuoxing, it would be equivalent to him losing 99% of his combat power. I don't know about that either. After all, your situation is rare in history. I don't know what will happen if you are thrown into a pile with other tests. Jin Shun scratched his head, a little distressed. However, if I give it my all, I might be able to break free from the seal. When I was on the 5th stage, I forced a divine armament to break free and pass the 5th stage, Yin Nuoxing said softly. As expected, the one who passed the 5th stage was you. When Jin Shun heard his words, he wasn't too surprised. He was just a little surprised. However, after thinking about it carefully, he felt that something was wrong. Then, he opened his eyes wide. Yin Nuoxing rushed to the 5th stage without using a divine armament. In the end, he used a divine armament to pass the 5th stage. He was only at the 1st rank of the demon rank. At this time, he also understood why Empress Jean and the others had made their decision. This brat probably didn't need a divine armament to kill a beginner god expert. If he used a divine armament at full power, even an emperor god expert would have to retreat. This brat was a monster. What are the 6th and 7th stages like? Yin Nuoxing asked. He needed to pass the 7th stage with the strength of the 1st rank of the demon rank. However, he felt that the 5th stage was incomparably difficult. Without the help of a divine armament, he could only be comparable to an underworld god expert. However, that was only regarding the use of spatial energy. In reality, he was still a weakling at the 1st rank of the demon rank. The 6th stage is darkness. The 7th stage is a trial comparable to an underworld god expert. There is only one enemy. Similarly, that enemy also controls the light element, Jin Shun said in a low voice. When Yin Nuoxing heard this, he felt a headache coming on. Without a divine artifact, he would be restricted everywhere. He did not think that he would be able to pass through the Spiritual Light Pagoda just by charging through it. At most, he would accidentally die once, and he would not be able to cultivate. However, not being able to cultivate was not a problem. The more difficult problem was that he seemed to be unable to suppress it. The abundant energy in his body was constantly attacking that barrier. He estimated that he would automatically advance to the 1st rank of the demon rank soon. Even if he didn't cultivate, it would be very difficult to suppress it. He had even cut off his connection with the energy and elements of heaven and earth. However, his cultivation was constantly accumulating. At this speed, he might advance to the 2nd rank of the demon rank in less than 3 months. What a headache! Yin Nuoxing told Jin Shun about this situation. The latter also felt a huge headache. In the past, they hoped that their disciples would cultivate as fast as possible. The stronger they were, the better. However, at this moment, they hoped that the former's cultivation would increase slowly. It's like a slow death. Jin Shun patted his head. This was really difficult for him. It was impossible to seal one's cultivation. The absorption spirit, divine, physique's ability to devour energy, could even devour the seal. "Where's Miss Feng?" Jin Shin suddenly asked as he ran his fingers through his hair. When Yin Nuoxing heard this, he lowered his head. Before he could call out, Feng, who was hiding in his chest, flew out and transformed into a great beauty with sexy curves. Her beautiful and elegant face had a trace of confusion. Mei Mao glanced at Yin Nuoxing. She seemed to have just woken up. "Miss Feng, you have a soul contract with young master. You can enter his soul." "Look," Jin Chen said softly. "It's useless." However, before he could finish, Feng Er interrupted him. She gently held Yin Nuoxing's face and sighed. "Sister Zi, Sister Su Ming, Sister Xen and Yi Shi, the 5 of us worked together, but we still couldn't do anything about the source of the demon qi. It's the demon qi born from Xing Xing's soul. We might be able to deal with it if it's an ordinary soul that's infected by the demon qi, but for someone like Xing Xing, no matter who it is, once infected, even the gods can't do anything about it. What will we do about it?" Looking at Xing Xing slowly walking towards self-destruction, we are more anxious and distressed than anyone else. Feng sighed. Mei Mao looked a little sad. She stared at Yin Nuoxing's colorful eyes. There was attachment and love in them. But more than that, there was anxiety hidden deep inside. Yin Nuoxing's heart trembled. Then he sighed. Letting them watch him walk towards the abyss was probably a kind of torture. He stroked Feng Er's hair and patted Xian's head. In the end, he didn't say anything. What could he say? Looking at the 3 people with his aged eyes, Jin Shun smiled bitterly. Then he coughed dryly and said, "Let's not talk about the future. Let's talk about the present. Young master, it's almost impossible for you to pass through the 7th step of the Spirit Light Tower with the strength of a demon rank. However, since you can pass through the 6th step, there's still some hope. Now, we can only strengthen young master's strength in other aspects. For example, the strength of your physical body. Perhaps, young master can go to Baiyin Pavilion to find something suitable for refining your body. I've also thought about what you've said. I've found a divine grade, profound technique here that I can cultivate. However, I'm not sure if I'll be able to increase my cultivation if I cultivate it." Yin Nuoxing sighed. He stroked his ring and took out a golden scroll. Then, he handed it to Jin Shun. The meaning of his action was self-evident. Seeing him hand over the scroll and hearing that it was a divine grade profound art, Jin Shun was a little surprised. It seemed that the estrangement between young master and the 9 deities temple had long disappeared. Without thinking too much, Jin Shun took the scroll and slowly unfolded it. Feng and Xian also hurriedly came over to take a look. Vajra Divine Art, a divine grade profound art of body refining. It builds an indestructible body. When cultivated to the advanced level, one's body will be as tough as steel, like a walking human-shaped divine weapon. However, to cultivate this art, one must bear the pain of tearing the body 9 times. Bones, tendons, meridians, body will be broken, and then the body will be reconstructed. If one can't bear it and gives up halfway, one will be killed by the backlash of the divine art. Those who want to cultivate this art need to think twice before doing it. After reading the divine art, the 3 of them were a little dazed. Xian walked to Yin Nuoxing's side nervously. She held his hand tightly and whispered, "Little star, do you really want to go further and further down the path of a madman? Don't you plan to turn back?" "I don't agree." Even Feng who had always been gentle, walked to his side and looked at Yin Nuoxing with sharp eyes. He had cultivated enough strange things, but this so-called Vajra divine art was simply a suicidal divine art. He would probably die before he could cultivate it. And this is the 9 tribulations divine art. When cultivating it, one will encounter many unimaginable dangers. Jin Shun frowned. 9 tribulations divine art? Feng and Xian were a little surprised. Feng frowned slightly. She seemed to have an impression of it. As the name suggests, the 9 tribulations divine art. When cultivating this kind of profound art, one will encounter 9 tribulations. It may be the simplest one, attracting heavenly lightning, or it may be something else. But profound, art-hard incantations with 9 tribulations are all top profound arts of that grade. Once cultivated and experienced 9 tribulations, one's battle strength will transform and become very terrifying. Jin Chen explained. When Yin Nuashing heard this, he frowned. He seemed to have heard of it somewhere before. Have you forgotten? The burning soul incantation that you cultivate, as well as the other profound arts and hard incantations, are all 9 tribulations divine arts. Otherwise, how do you think that you had so many heavenly tribulations in the past? Those were all heavenly tribulations that were triggered by the profound arts. Even though you were able to resolve them easily, Zi, who was in his soul, said softly. Yin Nuashing pondered for a long time. Listening to Jin Shun and Xian's discussion, he felt a little helpless. He flipped his hand and put away the Vajra divine art. He sighed and said, "Let me think about it. There's no hurry." Seeing that he seemed to have given up on the idea, the 3 of them secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Then Jin Shun said, "Young master, you could go to the Azure Cloud Pavilion to have a look. There are some pills that have the effect of tempering the body. With young master's physique, the side effects of the pills will be minimized. You could take them without worry." They can do that. Yin Nuashing was stunned. The divine body of the Na Ling divine body is dozens of times more sensitive to energy, and it can use energy more efficiently than any other body type. It can be hundreds or even thousands of times more efficient than ordinary people. Once the energy flows through the body, it will be transformed into the purest energy, said Feng Er softly. Hearing this, Yin Nuashing's eyes rolled a few times. No one knew what he was thinking. His colorful eyes looked at Xian and Feng Er, and finally fixed on Jin Shun. He nodded and said, "I'll go there now. Do you know the way? If not, I'll ask you to take you there." Jin Shun nodded and said, "It's okay. I'll just look for it. I won't trouble you, senior." Yin Nuashing shook his head with a smile. After chatting for a while, Feng Er changed back to her original form and shrank into Yin Nuashing's chest. Yin Nuashing and Feng Er rushed out of the Golden Forest and rushed toward the Azure Cloud Pavilion. Jin Shun watched the 2 leave, sighed, and walked back into the thatched cottage. The 3 of them didn't see that under the golden tree outside the thatched cottage, there was a blurry figure, his chest rising and falling rapidly. With Yin Nuashing and Feng Er's speed, even though the 2 places were very far away, it only took them half an hour to reach the Azure Cloud Pavilion. And this was under the condition that Yin Nuashing didn't use the light element. The 2 stood high in the sky and looked down. Under the clouds, there was a magnificent dark green hall that almost blended in with the surrounding forest. A faint, immortal aura lingered around it, making it look like a heavenly palace. Everywhere I go, there are people. Looking at the ant-like number of people below, Yin Nuashing felt a little troubled. There were many people in the spiritual light pagoda, the war god temple, and even this rich man's chopping hand holy land had many people. Did the Long Guang Academy have so many people? Our previous understanding of the Long Guang Academy was only the tip of the iceberg, Xian said softly, also somewhat amazed. Let's go. Let's go to the chopping hand holy land. You choose. I'll do the chopping hand holy land. Yin Nuashing crossed his arms in front of his chest. There was a dark gold token in his right hand. The 6 zeros on it were extremely dazzling. We've known each other for so long, but I've never given you anything. If you take a fancy to something, don't hesitate to take it. Yin Nuashing smiled at Xian and reached out to rub her head. Xian was startled by these words. Mei Mao stared blankly at Yin Nuashing, but didn't see anything in his eyes. It seemed that he just wanted to give her a gift. After she understood, she also bitterly smiled in her heart. She thought that she had inadvertently melted him, but in the end, he was still a stinking stone. Thinking of this, Xian muttered and lightly poked Yin Nuashing's waist with her lily-white hand. Startled, Yin Nuashing suddenly bounced away. Such a big reaction almost made him fly to the sky. This girl, When Yin Nuoxing recovered and lowered his head, he only saw Xian making a face at him and throwing the back of her head at him. He bitterly smiled and hurriedly followed her. Chapter 624. What appeared in front of Yin Nuoxing and Xian was a vast and boundless palace. There was also a dense energy mist circulating within the palace. Brilliant starlight shone down, causing Yin Nuoxing's body to light up with resplendent starlight. Raising his head, he discovered that the palace didn't have a ceiling. Instead, there was a vast and boundless starry sky, a real starry sky. A real starry sky. My body directly reacted. This place shouldn't be too far from the starry sky. How magical. Raising his head to look at the starry sky, Yin Nuoxing even wondered if he would directly rush into the starry sky if he were to jump out like this. And in the starry sky, or perhaps in the sky above the palace, there were balls of light the size of a head floating. He could vaguely see all kinds of scrolls, diagrams, crystals, weapons, pills, heavenly treasures, and so on in those balls of light. Although this design is very gorgeous, very powerful, and very generous, Yin Nuoxing raised his head to look at the numerous balls of light in the sky. He tilted his head and said to Xian, "Won't your neck hurt if you look at them for too long?" "Xian, there's a restriction in the Azure Cloud Pavilion. It's equivalent to a 7th grade divine rank formation. The probability of breaking it is about 30%. Why don't we rob this place?" Yin Nuoxing opened his evil spirit eye and looked around. "Finally," he said with a smile. This defensive measure was really powerful. He hadn't seen a 7th grade divine rank formation many times. "Little star, we will be wanted by the Farlight Academy." Xian bitterly smiled. Just as Yin Nuoxing and Xian were sizing up the Azure Cloud Pavilion with its starry sky, they suddenly felt that the surrounding gazes seemed to be fixed on them. "All right, we're attracting light and attention. I think we should just slip away." Feeling the surrounding gazes that were flickering with amazement, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but cover his face. He adjusted the half mask on his face and sighed. Xian was fine. Not many people in the Farlight Academy could compare with his exquisite appearance. As for himself, although he had already said that he was a man that day, perhaps there were people who liked him. The 2 freshmen on the Devil rankings, I really want to get acquainted with them. I heard that today, the freshmen are forming their own factions. Some of the more talented ones have been recruited by some of the older students' big societies. I wonder what the 2 first-ranked and second-ranked freshmen plan to do. That day in the Spirit Light Pagoda, the number 3 ranker on the Devil rankings, Senior Ding, went to look for that color-haired guy. However, she was rejected. F***CK. If Senior Sister Ding comes to me, I will definitely join her with all my limbs raised. How can this guy? You are disgusting. Hearing the surrounding voices, Yin Nuoxing let out a long sigh. The young lady beside him also understood his state of mind. Her slender, jade-like hand gently held his hand as they walked toward the interior of the Azure Cloud Pavilion. That freshman is also very pretty. When Xian held Yin Nuoxing's hand, the whispers in the surroundings instantly turned into collective sighs. All of them were either shaking their heads or stamping their feet. However, none of them dared to say anything. Although they were freshmen, they were still ranked number 20 and number 36 on the Devil rankings. Could it be that the Academy's Devil rankings had made a mistake? "Little star, why don't you wear female clothing in the future? I will dress you up beautifully." After entering the depths of the Azure Cloud Pavilion, only then did Xian stop his jogging steps. He turned his head and smiled sweetly at Yin Nuoxing. "How are we going to live like this? Why are you teasing me like this?" When Yin Nuoxing heard this, his mind automatically flashed back to when Yin was still by his side. She would often dress him up as a girl. His handsome face instantly flushed red as he glared fiercely at Xian. "I feel that it's very suitable. Even if Little Star is a girl, I will still like her." Xian smiled and pouted. Her other hand gently caressed Yin Nuoxing's face as she smiled. In that instant, Yin Nuoxing's heart almost couldn't take it anymore. Yin Nuashing was so embarrassed that his handsome face flushed red. Once again, he was tormented by this lass until he lowered his head. He couldn't help but slap himself in his heart. Why was he so useless? He surrendered after being teased a little. Seeing that he was silent, Xian smiled. She turned her head and looked into the main hall. Her lily-white hand tightly held Yin Nuashing's hand as she walked with light steps, leading him inside. She also knew how to tease him at the right time. If she continued to tease him, Yin Nuashing would probably fight her to the death. If she continued to tease him until they were aroused, the two of them probably wouldn't be able to control themselves and would sink into each other. There were a few times when Yin Nuashing stopped at the last moment. Otherwise, something really would have happened. Thinking of this, a faint blush appeared on Xian's beautiful face. She immediately suppressed it and secretly scolded herself for being shameless. She didn't have the slightest bit of a girl's modesty. Both of them had an indescribable feeling. Their faces were red as they lowered their heads. Neither of them looked at the other, and neither of them spoke. However, their hands that were holding each other's hands were interlocked, and their grip was getting tighter and tighter. After walking for a while, Yin Nuashing raised his head and looked into the sky and the star field. There were hundreds and thousands of transparent balls of light suspended in that area. Sealed within each ball of light were medicinal pills the size of longans. Some words were carved outside the balls of light, introducing the names and effects of the medicinal pills. Yin Nuashing tugged at the small hand in his palm, startling Xian. She quickly raised her head and saw that he was looking up. She secretly heaved a sigh of relief and suppressed her surging emotions. She also lifted Mei Mao to look at the numerous medicinal pills. Both of them had come with a very strong purpose, and that was to find medicinal pills that could temper the body. As a result, they were especially serious when they looked at the pills. Dragon Blood Pill. It can cleanse the blood and change the marrow of people below the demigod level. A faint trace of dragon blood can stimulate the change of the bloodline. It's good, but the medicinal effects of this pill are too violent. If it stimulates the bloodline and causes it to go berserk, it will be unable to absorb it. If it's serious, it will require blood change. Body Shaping Pill. It strengthens the body and changes the constitution. Bone Refining Pill. It condenses the bones and cleanses the impurities. Xian raised his head and carefully searched through the medicinal pills. However, he suddenly felt that Yin Nuashing didn't react at all. He couldn't help but lower his head and look at the silent Yin Nuashing. He asked, "Little star, what are you looking for?" "I'm looking for a red medicinal pill that's suitable for people between the demonic level and the demigod level. It's also an immortal level medicinal pill called the Soul Tempering and Marrow Cleansing Pill. It can cleanse the soul and all the impurities in the body. It can strengthen the soul, make the soul and body transparent and clear, and make the body more perfect," Yin Nuashing said softly. "I don't lack methods to temper the body. Whether it's a divine weapon or a divine flame, they're constantly cleansing my body. These subtle changes need time to accumulate. What I want to do is to cleanse the deeply hidden impurities in the soul and body. I can speed up this subtle process." An immortal level medicinal pill. Xian's Mei Mao's eyes flickered. She remembered that she saw on the light screen in the token last time. She also saw an immortal level medicinal pill called the Blood God Pill. It seemed to cost 8 million energy points. Do you still remember the Heavenly Spirit branch? The divine item that can be refined without the use of a divine flame. Yin Nuashing tilted her head and looked at her with a slight smile. The old man who claimed to be the incarnation of the Heavenly Spirit tree left behind 5 9-meter-long branches and hundreds of Heavenly Spirit tree leaves. He had tampered with them himself. The energy was completely restrained and preserved to the greatest extent. Therefore, when he refined them, he didn't need to use too much energy to refine them. Yes, at that time, Little Star used that to connect my broken meridians and even gave me the wood element. Ziyin nodded her head as a look of reminiscence flashed through her beautiful eyes. That was what he had used when he had given her a new life. How could she forget it? The divine tree ranked 3rd on the Heaven and Earth treasure ranking, the Heavenly Spirit tree. At that time, I was also simple-minded. I didn't know what kind of opportunity it was to see the heavenly spirit tree. Only now do I know why so many people were scrambling for it. It's not an exaggeration to call that thing a divine item among divine items. Yin Nuashing sighed. She stroked the pendant with her palm and took out a broken emerald branch that was only 1 meter long. A rich vitality pervaded the air, making Xian feel as if she was looking at a towering ancient tree. Its branches and leaves spread out and covered an entire, huge city. That rich vitality made her feel her vitality become more active with just a sniff. Her life source also showed signs of growth. This majestic vitality. Xian's Mei Mao was full of shock. She didn't think much of it that time, but now she understood how precious this divine item was. Oh, if I had to categorize it, I'd rank it as a divine item that surpasses a 12th level material. Yin Nuashing waved the emerald branch in her hand and smiled. If you use this 1-inch heavenly spirit tree branch to refine medicine, you can extend your life by 10 million years. 10 million years. Xian was shocked by this huge number. However, they hadn't experienced such a long period of time, so they didn't know how long the so-called 10 million years was. But thinking about it, this divine item was fatally attractive to countless people. Who wouldn't want to live a little longer? Putting away the heavenly spirit tree branch in her hand, Yin Nuashing smiled and said, "In the things that Xianin left behind, I discovered a secret method that can fuse natural treasures into pills that have already been formed. It can stimulate the effects and increase the effectiveness. As for the multiplier, it depends on the level of the natural treasure. I estimate that an inch-long heavenly spirit tree branch can increase the effectiveness of an immortal grade pill by more than 6 times. The soul-tempering and marrow-cleansing pill can strengthen the soul. I'm not too sure how it can be strengthened. If I can break through the shackles of the realm and let my soul advance from the peak of the demigod realm to the demigod realm, or even the god realm, I'm a little confident that I can get rid of the demonic qi in my soul. If I fail, I'll suffer a backlash." Yin Nuashing smiled. How much is a little confident? Xian blinked at Mei Mao and asked softly. Yin Nuashing was stunned. She lowered her head and saw those limpid eyes staring straight at her. Her heart skipped a beat, and the feeling of wanting to lie disappeared. She smiled bitterly and stretched out 3 fingers, saying 30%. That's true. Seeing this, Xian sighed. However, she was already mentally prepared and wasn't surprised. I thought you would stop me or say something else. Seeing that she just nodded quietly, Yin Nuashing was a little stunned. Her reaction didn't seem right. What does it need to pay a price? The demonic qi in your soul is already a dead end. You have a 30% chance of getting rid of it. Little Star is a true genius. Why should I stop you? You can't suppress your realm anymore. I should support you instead." Xian shrugged and sighed. Mei Mao stared at that beautiful face and couldn't help but stretch out her hand to caress it. It was because she cared that she could only endure the pain and let him do it. If he could get rid of this 30% chance, his future would be bright. If he couldn't, then she would quietly stay by his side and accompany him as he continued to search for a solution. She didn't want her thoughts to be a burden to him. Lass, hearing this and looking at her clear Mei Mao, Yin Nuashing's heart warmed slightly. "If you want to thank Little Star, just open your heart to me." Xian smiled gently. She leaned closer and rubbed her cheek against his face. Yin Nuashing nodded silently. He raised his head and continued to search among the balls of light in the sky. The soul-tempering and marrow-cleansing pill was considered a high-grade immortal pill. Even the Farlight Academy might not have such a precious pill. All right, that was a slap in the face. However, just as Yin Nuashing felt that there shouldn't be any, he saw a red pill. Looking at the name, it was the soul-tempering and marrow-cleansing pill. He felt like he had been slapped in the face. 12 million. Damn, isn't this too expensive? However, when he saw the number outside, his eyes widened in shock. He lowered his head and looked at the energy value in his hand. He couldn't help but slap his forehead. He thought that 8 million was already a lot, Xian also saw his embarrassment and couldn't help but cover her mouth and chuckle. She handed over her token and said with a smile, "Use mine. Then I'll borrow it first." Yin Nuashing sighed and nodded. He took her token and transferred 4 million energy value to his own token. Looking at the dazzling 12 million on his token, he felt an inexplicable heartache. Looking up at the soul-tempering and marrow-cleansing pill floating in the air, Yin Nuashing raised his right hand. A suction force erupted from his palm and sucked the ball of light into his palm. Just as he was about to use his token to open it, a sudden shout came from behind him, causing his hand to pause. "Stop!" A hint of surprise flashed across Yin Nuashing's colorful eyes. Just as he turned his head, a white figure appeared in front of him like a ghost. The sharp wind from his palm brought along a sharp whistling sound as it slapped toward his wrist. The strong wind caused his windbreaker to flap loudly. Just as Yin Nuashing was about to throw the ball of light in his hand behind him, a purple figure appeared like a ghost and blocked his path. The 5 fingers of her jade-like hand clasped together, and a small formation appeared in the palm of her hand. The power of the 5 elements rapidly condensed and violently blasted out with a terrifying force. The palm containing the 5 elements collided with the sharp, whistling palm, causing a series of dull sounds to erupt. Amidst the elemental explosion, both of them took a few steps back. Yin Nuashing freed one hand and hurriedly hugged Xian's slender waist. He raised his head and looked at the person in white who attacked. His colorful eyes narrowed slightly, and some coldness surged in them. Chapter 6:25. The white-robed man who appeared before Yin Nuashing and Xian had a rather young appearance, looking to be around 23 or 24 years old. He was dressed in white robes that fluttered in the wind, exuding a cold aura that made people want to keep their distance from him. His face was covered with scars, and if one ignored those scars, they would see an extremely handsome face. There was a bestial vigilance between his brows, as though he would explode in the next second. His eyes were as vicious as a wolf's, causing the hearts of those who saw it to tremble. The energy fluctuations spread throughout the entire Great Hall, causing the people of the Azure Cloud Pavilion to turn their gazes over in curiosity. Those who were standing far away hurriedly flew over to the place of the conflict, wanting to watch the show. Those who were standing nearby couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air when they saw the white-robed man. Yin Mo, that mission maniac and battle maniac. The 15th ranked on the devil rankings, Yin Mo. When he was in the academy, didn't he always stay in the War God Hall and leave after accepting missions? Why would he appear in the Azure Cloud Pavilion today? Those wolf-like eyes caused my aura to freeze. I heard that he is addicted to missions and rarely returns to the academy to cultivate. If it wasn't for the fact that he never went to the War God Hall to update his ranking, one of the top 10 spots on the devil rankings would definitely be moved away. Hearing the whispers in the surroundings, Yin Nuashing lowered his head and glanced at Xian. Seeing that she wasn't injured and was only pushed back by a single palm strike, he heaved a sigh of relief. However, he reprimanded her. "Why did you rush over?" I saw that it was inconvenient for your hands, so I subconsciously." After being reprimanded by him, Xian couldn't help but shrink her head back. Her beautiful eyes looked at him pitifully. Seeing that he seemed to be a little angry and a little worried, she felt a sweetness in her heart. However, when she displayed such emotions, it caused the people in the surroundings to gulp down their saliva. Yin Nuashing was startled by her acting cute and sighed. Since it was inconvenient for his hands to move, he could only use his forehead to touch her forehead as he softly said, "Idiot, when did you see that I couldn't handle it?" After saying that, he used his arm to help her up. With a flip of his hand, he kept the token and picked up the hat that was blown away. Patting it, he carefully placed it on her head. After that, he looked at Yin Mo in a bad mood and said, "What do you want?" After Yin Mo clashed head-on with Xian, he was sent flying a few meters away. At this moment, his wolf-like eyes were glaring at Xian. He was surprised at how young Xian was, and also surprised that he was almost defeated by her with a single palm strike. The Farlight Academy was known as the Battle Maniac and the Mission Maniac. He, Yin Mo, had been in the academy for 5 years, but the time he spent in the academy might not exceed 3 months. Most of the time, he would run out after accepting missions, completing countless semi-god ranked missions and even team missions. He had once said that if it wasn't for the fact that he was too lazy to go to the combat hall to test his combat strength, he would definitely be in the top 5 of the demon rankings. This was something that everyone acknowledged. Moreover, in the near future, he would be able to enter the semi-god rank. However, today he was sent flying by a palm strike from a girl who looked very young. What he was sent flying by that palm strike might have been his spirit, his world. However, there was one thing that was certain. The pride in his heart was hurt. However, such emotions only existed for a second. He who lived like a wild beast naturally wouldn't be easily affected by such things. It wasn't easy for him to lose his will to fight. That alchemy pill is mine. His snow-white robes fluttered in the wind. Yin Mo's fierce gaze pierced through his bangs, staring at Yin Nuoxing as he coldly spoke. Staring at his beast-like eyes, Yin Nuoxing narrowed her eyes as she frowned. She took a step forward, blocking Xian behind her. Her left hand was still holding onto the soul-forging marrow cleansing pill. She brought it before her and seriously looked at it before she calmly spoke. Sir, your name is Yin Mo. In the introduction of this soul-forging marrow cleansing pill, there's no mention of her name, Yin Mo. Also, there are a few large words written on the back of this pill. Look carefully, belonging to the Farlight Academy. What does it have to do with you? I said it's mine, so it's mine. Yin Mo suddenly took a step forward and stared coldly at Yin Nuoxing. Hearing the tyrannical tone in his voice, the spectating students couldn't help but bitterly smile. This mission madman was still so tyrannical. Although this new student was ranked number 20 on the devil rankings, Yin Mo's strength was comparable to the top 5. This time around, there would be trouble. 12 million energy points. Can you afford it? Yin Nuoxing raised her eyes as she calmly spoke. Yin Mo raised his head and cracked his neck. A series of cracking sounds rang out as he waved his arm, his veins throbbing, and took out his command medallion. After that, he flipped it over and saw the value of 15 million written on it. Many people drew in a breath of cold air. Heavens, this was truly a mission madman. How many missions did he have to complete in order to gather 15 million energy points? Yin Nuoxing lowered her head and looked at the ball of light. She suddenly sneered and looked at Yin Mo with disdain as she calmly spoke. All right, you can afford it. However, we came here first, and we also have enough energy points to buy this pill. Tell me, why should I give the item in my hands to you? Because of me. Yin Mo abruptly took a second step forward. A surge of violent devil chi soared into the sky, bringing with it waves of baleful aura. It was like a primordial beast that was released from its cage, causing the spectating students to feel stuffy in their chests. It was difficult for them to breathe as they hurriedly retreated. With my explosive temper, I won't give it to you. What's the matter? Just these 2 words caused Yin Nuoxing's explosive temper to rush to her head. She coldly snorted as a surge of terrifying soul force gushed out from her forehead, blocking the aura that was rushing over like a ferocious beast. Bang, 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 bang. 2 formless energies collided between the 2 of them, causing a series of muffled sounds to ring out. The ground of the Azure Cloud Pavilion was blasted open, creating several large craters. Shattered rocks flew everywhere. The 2 of them stood firmly at their original location, not retreating even a small step. It's over. This freshman doesn't want to live anymore. In the academy, other than those monsters in the top 10 of the devil ranking, this is the first time I've seen someone who dares to confront Yin Mo. When the students saw Yin Mo erupting with his aura, they couldn't help but cover their eyes. They were very clear about the consequences of going against Yin Mo, looking at Yin Mo's increasingly gloomy gaze. Yin Nuoxing's expression also sank. She took a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. You are looking for a beating? Everyone felt that the whistling of the wind in the surroundings had stopped. Even though there were two waves of energy clashing, it was so quiet that they could hear a pin drop. This was the first time they had seen such a ferocious person. She actually dared to say to that beast-like lunatic that he was looking for a beating. That guy was ranked 15th on the devil ranking, but his actual combat prowess was comparable to the top 5. He was as ferocious as a wild beast and would often hibernate in the Devil Beast Mountain, drinking the blood of demonic beasts. Even demigod-ranked demonic beasts would be smacked to death by him. Yet today, someone actually dared to say that he was looking for a beating. Seeing that there was something wrong with the atmosphere, the people in the surroundings hurriedly retreated, fearing that they would be caught in the crossfire. The moment the words Yin Nuashing came out, this fight was already unavoidable. Brat, you are very good. What's your rank on the devil ranking? Yin Mo's expression turned somewhat malevolent because of those two words. Waves of ferocious bestiality erupted from him, as though he was a ferocious beast. 20. Yin Nuashing calmly replied. Billowing elemental energy and astral energy had already condensed. If this Yin Mo really wanted to fight, he didn't mind using the light element to let the latter experience what it felt like to fly. Hearing the number, veins popped out on Yin Mo's face. He felt humiliated. A fellow ranked 20th on the devil ranking actually dared to speak to him in such a manner. Brat, today, I will teach you how to keep a low profile in the academy. Yin Mo opened his mouth and roared. His body trembled slightly as waves of dense green energy gushed out, enveloping his entire body. He stomped his feet on the ground, creating a huge crater. His body was like a gigantic demonic beast that was rampaging about, bringing with it violent energy as he charged fiercely toward Yin Yaxing. Yin Yaxing coldly stared at Yin Mo, who was charging over. The strong wind caused his black windbreaker and rainbow-colored hair to flutter. In his rainbow-colored eyes, Yin Mo's figure rapidly enlarged. Yin Yaxing's countenance turned slightly cold. His right hand casually stretched out, but when he did so, a formation flashed on his wrist. After that, he gently stretched out his hand, as though wanting to forcefully block Yin Mo's attack. This fellow is crazy. If he charges over like that, his hand will be broken. Everyone in the surroundings sucked in a breath of cold air. Was he intending to compete in strength? Although they didn't know what level Yin Yaxing was at, a freshman shouldn't be stronger than 3rd seal of the devil rank. Was he intending to use the physical strength of 3rd seal of the devil rank to fight against a peak devil rank human-shaped demonic beast? A shocking glow flashed across Yin Mo's ruthless eyes when he saw this. The wild and violent energy on his body became much denser at this moment. The frightening strength merely brushed past the ground and formed a deep gully. Yin Mo's enormous hand clenched into a fist as he looked at the girl's white hand that was within reach. He threw it forward in a lightning-like manner. A wind tore through the air and lifted layers of the floorboards. Bang! The oppressive sound of flesh colliding caused the surrounding ground to collapse. Everyone hurriedly closed their eyes. With his full force charge, even if that freshman didn't die, he would be severely injured. They couldn't bear to see what would happen to that freshman. I thought that you would use your head to charge over. However, a faint teasing voice caused everyone's heart to jump. They hurriedly opened their eyes and looked over. They saw that Yin Yaxing's seemingly weak palm was resisting a fist that was several times larger than his palm. Wisps of white smoke were emitted from the surroundings. No matter how much strength the huge fist exerted, it was unable to push the slender palm away even a little. Wow, damn, what a fierce person. He actually blocked Yin Mo with his bare hands. When everyone saw this, they suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. The degree of their reaction was not any weaker than before. Yin Mo was also startled for a moment. A trace of shock flashed across his ruthless, blood-red eyes. Even a peak devil-class expert would not be able to block his charge just like that. His feet suddenly stomped on the ground. Yinmo's body started to spin like a top. His leg carried the sound of wind and thunder as it fiercely swung towards Yun Nuoxing's arm. Sensing the enormous strength of that force, Yun Nuoxing still raised her right hand gently. 4 to 5 tiny formations appeared on her arm. Just as they were formed, the right leg that was swung over like a huge tree also heavily collided with the formations. Its strength was completely blocked and dissipated by the 4 formations. Yinmo's eyes shrank slightly. He suddenly retracted his right leg and jumped back a few meters. His feet were like the wind as his body used the rebounding force to shoot out like a cannonball. Green energy quickly gathered on his right hand, and he tightly clenched it into a claw. Like a falcon hunting its prey, he quickly pounced towards Yun Nuoxing. Yun Nuoxing slightly retracted her palm and twisted it slightly. After that, she once again stretched it out in an ordinary manner. This time, a total of 6 formations were connected and condensed in front of her palm, forcefully receiving this ferocious attack. The green energy swept across the 6 layers of formations, causing the latter to rapidly shake. However, not a single formation was broken. However, it caused the surrounding floor to be torn into powder. Bastard! In a short 2 minutes, the two of them had exchanged dozens of blows. Fierce gales destroyed the floor of the large hall into a mess. Yun Nuoxing was still like a mountain. No matter how Yin Mo attacked from all directions and used all his methods, he did not move half a step. Even the ground 1 foot in front of him was completely undamaged, causing the latter to be alarmed. This freshman is haunted? The surrounding onlookers could not help but cry out in surprise. With Yin Mo's strength at the peak of the devil rank, he was actually unable to make a freshman take a step back. Even in the Highlight Academy, there were very few people who could win against the former strength. Are you done with your self-satisfied attacks? If you are, it should be my turn, right? After swinging her wrist that was a little tired from holding it up, Yun Nuoxing once again blocked Yin Mo's attack. At the instant she shook him off, a wave of blazing fire elements violently pounced towards her through the contact between their limbs. The intense burning sensation caused the latter to feel pain, and she hurriedly retracted her palm. After that, she saw a ray of light descending on her chest like lightning. Chapter 6:26. Yun Nuoxing's expression was as calm as ever. Her palm, which was condensed with the element of light and divine flames, fiercely slapped towards Yin Mo's shoulder, who was stunned for a moment. Formations appeared one after another, and a total of 12 formations were condensed into one. Looking at the momentum, she did not plan to show any mercy. Stop! However, just as Yun Nuoxing's palm was only an inch away from Yin Mo's shoulder, an aged shout suddenly rushed over from the distance. The energy contained in the shout caused the eardrums of the students present to hurt. A buzzing sound rang out as if they had tinnitus. The instant the shout rang out, Yun Nuoxing's expression changed slightly. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and the palm that was only an inch away from Yin Mo's shoulder instantly stopped as if it had been frozen. The enormous energy that had been condensed was also retracted in an instant, and not a single bit of it touched Yin Mo home. The instant Yun Nuoxing's palm stopped, 2 extremely powerful gusts of wind suddenly swept down from the sky, turning into 2 storms that blew Yun Nuoxing and Yin Mo apart, separating them by a dozen meters. After being blown away by the storm, Yun Nuoxing's mind moved. Spatial energy wrapped around her as she landed steadily on the ground. Her left hand was steadily holding onto the ball of light from the beginning to the end, while Yin Mo staggered backwards. In the end, he fiercely stomped his foot on the ground, dispersing the force of the blow. Only then did he stabilize his body, creating a pit in the ground. After the two of them stabilized themselves, they glanced at each other. Then, like everyone else, they turned their gazes towards the direction where the shout had come from. A few figures quickly flew over from the Azure Cloud Pavilion's passageway. The person in the lead was clearly an old man. His speed was extremely fast, and everyone only felt that he had appeared in front of them in a flash. Elder Ming, it seems that someone has gone to inform them. Even the elder guarding the Azure Cloud Pavilion has been called out. Seeing the tall and straight figure of the black-haired old man, the surrounding students were startled. Soon after, they involuntarily wiped the sweat from their foreheads. It seemed that today's matter could come to an end. Elder Ming had been guarding the Baiyun Pavilion and would not come out unless something happened. It seemed that the fight between the two of them had alarmed this elder. Fighting is not allowed in the Azure Cloud Pavilion. The notice at the entrance clearly states that. Are you all blind? A black-haired old man shouted coldly as he looked around with a sharp gaze. Hearing the old man's question, the surrounding students all closed their mouths and shrunk their heads, not saying a word. The elders in the college were all gods of the initial god level, and they had great power. It would not be fun to offend them. Elder Ming. In the silence, Xian walked up to the old man with a light ball in her hand and said respectfully, I want to exchange it for this soul-forging and marrow-cleansing pill. 12 million energy value. Go to the entrance and register it. Then, use a token and stick it on. I will first deal with the matter of these two fellows. You can go by yourself. The old man raised his head and glanced at Xian, after which he pointed in a direction and spoke in an indifferent manner. Thank you, elder. Hearing this, Xian smiled and cupped her hands towards the old man. Then, she mischievously winked at Yin Nuoxing and walked towards the entrance with the light ball in her hand. Yin Mo, who was still sitting on the ground in a daze, suddenly jumped up when he saw that the light ball was about to be taken away by Xian. Green energy surged. What about you? Come over here and stand properly. You dare to make a move in front of this old man? Do you want me to ban you from entering the Baiyun Pavilion? However, before he could pounce, the old man suddenly berated him. Yin Mo was so shocked that his entire body trembled. Although he was unwilling, he could only watch as Xian's figure slowly disappeared into the crowd. Then, he turned his fierce gaze towards Yin Nuoxing. Yin Nuoxing sneered when she saw his fierce gaze. When the old man stopped them, she had already thrown the soul-forging and marrow-cleansing pills and the token to Xian. As for herself, she had caused such a big commotion. She should just wait to be punished. Quiet? If it's quiet, then tell me what happened. Who can make a sound? The two of you stand still. You have no right to speak. The old man glanced at the two of them and said indifferently. When he saw that the two of them were about to speak again, he berated them again. Yin Mo was so angry that his face turned black. Yin Nuoxing could only pout helplessly and obediently lower her head. This was the first time she had been lectured in public. Where should she put her old face, seeing that the two of them were completely silent? Elder Ming rolled his eyes and looked around the place. He casually pointed at a person and said indifferently, You, tell me what happened just now. Seeing that Elder Ming was pointing at him, that student was also shocked. He walked out with his heart in a mess. He carefully glanced at Yin Nuoxing and then at Yin Mo, who still had a fierce look on his face. He only felt bitterness in his heart. It seemed that no matter what he said, something bad would happen. However, he still braced himself and clasped his hands towards Elder Ming. He told the whole story without adding any details. With so many people present as witnesses, Elder Ming could not find a second person. If his story was too bizarre, he would definitely be punished. When he heard that student say that Yin Nuoxing was the freshman who had caused a huge commotion, a hint of surprise flashed across Elder Ming's eyes. However, he hid it in an instant. Then, he glanced at Yin Mo indifferently. After being glanced at, Yin Mo, who already had a fierce expression, finally showed some bitterness. Yin Mo, oh Yin Mo, you are a senior, but you actually snatched something from a freshman. I don't know what to say about this. Elder Ming did not know whether to laugh or cry after hearing the entire story. He shook his head and said indifferently, The item from the Baiyun Pavilion is on display there. Although you have worked hard for over a year for that enormous energy value, everything has to be done on a first-come, first-served basis. Rules are rules. Now that the soul-forging marrow-cleansing pill has already been exchanged with that little girl, you should give up. When Yin Mo heard this, His bitter expression changed a few times. A moment later, he glanced at Yin Nuoxing with extreme unwillingness. He did not win the fight and did not manage to snatch the item. He was really aggrieved. However, in front of Elder Ming, he did not dare to resist and could only nod his head gloomily. However, I have said that rules are rules. The two of you fought in the Baiyin Pavilion. After all, you have violated the rules. The punishment is that you are not allowed to step into the Baiyin Pavilion for a month. Do you have any objections? Elder Ming glared at the two of them and said indifferently, No. This student accepts the punishment wholeheartedly. Yin Nuoxing smiled and shrugged his shoulders. Not being able to enter the Baiyin Pavilion for a month was nothing to him. In any case, he rarely needed the items inside. No, Yin Mo's voice was low. For a mission maniac like him, not returning to the academy for a month was nothing. Every day, he would bury himself in missions and grind for energy value. He was about to go crazy. This punishment was not painful at all. Since you don't, then hurry up and leave. Elder Ming nodded his head. Seeing that the two of them were still standing at the same spot like pillars, his eyes could not help but widen as he berated them. The two of them were so shocked that their bodies trembled. They did not have the time to say anything and immediately ran away, causing a burst of laughter. Only when they ran out of the Baiyin Pavilion did the two of them stop while panting. They turned their heads and looked inside. Only when they did not see Elder Ming chasing after them did they breathe a sigh of relief. 20th on the devil rankings, right? I'll remember this debt. I'll come back to ask for your guidance in the future. Yin Nuoxing looked around, searching for Xian's figure. Yin Mo's eyes had returned to normal, and the fiendish aura on his body had also disappeared. It was as if he had become a different person. His voice had also become calm, without any fluctuations. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing turned his head strangely, but saw that he had already disappeared. Only then did he let out a heavy sigh. What a strange fellow. Little star. A gentle and light voice came from behind, causing Yin Nuoxing to smile. He turned his head and saw Xian jogging over from not far away. Seeing that she was safe and sound, he also heaved a sigh of relief. You're fine? Mei Mao scanned his body. Xian chuckled. I've been punished by not being able to enter the Azure Cloud Pavilion for a month. Yin Nuoxing spread his hands and chuckled indifferently. Hearing this, Xian's red lips moved slightly. He smiled and didn't say anything. He handed over the jade bottle that contained the soul-tempering and marrow-cleansing pills and said, The rank 8 war god token reduced my energy by 10%. I heard that the rank 9 war god token can reduce my energy by 20%. After receiving the pills, Yin Nuoxing was slightly taken aback. He shook his head with a bitter smile. Forget it. He didn't have any other requests anyway. He held her small hand and slowly walked out of the Azure Cloud Pavilion. Before he left, he turned his head and looked in the direction that Yin Mo had disappeared. He couldn't help but sigh. Although he was in the right, he had still offended Yin Mo. He wasn't afraid of a peak devil rank expert, but according to his thoughts, the latter wouldn't let things go. The most unavoidable sin in the world is called arrogance. Perhaps I'm the same. Yin Nuoxing muttered in his heart. Then he let out a long sigh. Forget it. He didn't want to think about it anymore. When the two of them returned to the freshman area, they suddenly felt that this was the first time they had returned. It was so quiet that the two of them were stunned. Usually, this place was very lively. Why didn't they see anyone today? When they returned to the small palace, before they even entered, they saw a student squatting by the lake very quietly. When he saw Yin Nuoxing and Xian return, he was first stunned. Then, his face exploded with ecstasy. Like a little rabbit, he jumped and ran to the side of the two of them. Brother Yun, Sister Xian. The student shouted happily. Then, he cupped his hands and said, We freshmen are forming our own club and faction in the square. Brother Lin told me to tell you personally. When the two of them heard this, they remembered that they seemed to have heard someone say that the freshmen were forming their own faction in the Azure Cloud Pavilion. What did he call us? Yin Nuoxing smiled. The two of them didn't seem to fit in. Among the freshmen, at most they knew Big Mountain and the other two. But among the freshmen, there must have been a group of people who got along well. The two of them seemed to be wandering on the periphery of this group. They didn't expect that someone would call them. Brother Lin said that he admires Brother Yun and the two of you very much. He has always wanted to find a chance to meet you, but he didn't have the chance. That's why he wanted me to try to invite you when we're forming the club today. The freshman cupped his hands and smiled very brightly, like a young boy who hadn't seen much of the world. Big Mountain. Oh, what about Zhong Songbai and the rest? Did they go too? Yin Nuoxing also smiled. This guy's smile was very clear. It reminded him of when Jin Wang first saw him. Big Brother Zhong and Big Brother Chuan are the few demon stage powerhouses among the freshmen, so they naturally went too. Now, almost all the freshmen of this batch are gathered at the square. Not only the area where we came from, but also the other 3 areas. It's very lively. The freshman's eyes were filled with longing, as if he couldn't wait to fly over and take a look. Yin Nuoxing muttered himself for a while. He remembered that Jin Shun had said that there were about 70 to 80,000 freshmen who stayed behind. That square would probably be very lively now. What's your name? Yin Nuoxing asked with a smile. Seeing that there seemed to be hope, the freshman cupped his hands excitedly and said happily, Brother Yin, my name is Mu Qing. If you don't mind, you can call me Little Qing in the future. What a simple child. Zian smiled and transmitted his voice to Yin Nuoxing. This Mu Qing looked like she was less than 20 years old. At their age, calling her a child seemed a little. You aren't that much older than him. I cough. This old man hasn't even said anything yet. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes and transmitted his voice back, acting like an old man. You only look 14 or 15 years old. Zian also turned around and rolled her eyes, leaving him speechless. Mu Qing, who was at the side, blushed when she saw the two exchanging glances. Looking at Zian's exquisite face, she felt a little envious of Yin Nuoxing. Although the two of them didn't appear in front of the freshmen, they were already regarded as male gods and goddesses. Being able to enter the top 40 of the devil rankings in a batch of freshmen shocked countless freshmen. It was hard to imagine. Seeing the two of them being so affectionate right now, she couldn't help but sigh. Indeed, only Brother Yun was worthy of such a girl. Little Qing, let's go to the square to take a look. A soft call caused Mu Qing to quickly pull Yun Yu's attention back. Seeing the two of them smiling, she was so excited that she almost jumped up. Her head was nodding like a chicken pecking at rice. She responded loudly and hurriedly led the way. Chapter 627. As dusk approached, a bustling public square was bustling with activity. Red lanterns and flagpoles could be seen everywhere. Streams of people could be seen everywhere. Most probably, if one walked in, they wouldn't be able to find where they were. The atmosphere was so lively that it felt like a festival. With such a huge commotion among the freshmen, even the seniors retracted their arrogance and chose to hide in the crowd, casually looking around. The seniors of the previous batches had also organized similar events. Now that they were here, they were reminiscing about the times when they were freshmen. Unknowingly, years passed by. There are so many people, and there are so many seniors. I feel that there are more seniors here. At the end of the public square, Yin Nuoxing and the other two slowly walked out. When they saw so many people here, Yin Nuoxing's eyes twitched. This crowd was so dense that it could scare someone with trypophobia to death. Brother Lin said that the majority of the seniors here are reminiscing about the past when they were freshmen. Occasionally, there will be seniors who don't belong to any organizations that would join the freshmen. There are also seniors who would take this opportunity to recruit more students. After all, the freshmen are the fresh blood. No matter which organization they join, they would be welcomed. Mu Qing smiled as he spoke. After that, he pointed to the seats and introduced what organizations they belonged to, who established them, what groups they belonged to, and who is the leader of them. I feel that this is more like a New Year's gathering. Yin Nuoxing placed his palm on his forehead and glanced around. This festive atmosphere caused him to recall the time when he was in the Mystic Dragon continent. At that time, when the Mystic Dragon ritual had just started, every household was filled with joy. After all, this is a large-scale gathering. Over 80% of the freshmen would come here. Occasionally, we would even see seniors on the devil rankings. However, I'm not sure about that. What I know is that there are 2 freshmen on the devil rankings before me. Mu Qing chuckled as he rubbed his head, causing Yin Nuoxing and Zian to shrug their shoulders. Unexpected. This was truly unexpected. The 3 of them walked and stopped. Occasionally, Mu Qing would inquire about information from some of the factions. This fellow had a harmless and delicate face. He looked like a little sunshine, especially that sunny smile of his, which made many people happy to chat with him. He also used this advantage to inquire about a lot of information. Among the freshmen, other than Brother Yun, Sister Zian, and Brother Lin, I heard that there are 3 very powerful fellows. They are all half-demon powerhouses and are said to be very talented. A few elders have taken a fancy to them and want to take them in as disciples, Mu Qing said mysteriously. The students who enter the Farlight Academy have to go through many rounds of selections. Those who stand out from the selections are naturally the geniuses among the geniuses. The divine world is vast, and there are countless people. What we don't lack the most is the number of people. Naturally, the number of geniuses that are born will not be small. I have seen many geniuses. They only need some time to become top-notch experts. Yin Nuoxing sighed as he spoke. He thought of the Taiyuan Grand Assembly and couldn't help but say, "But how much time does the divine world have left?" After he said that, Yin Nuoxing felt that something was wrong. He turned his head and, as expected, saw Mu Qing's eyes flickering with excitement. He was stunned for a moment and couldn't help but smile bitterly. "Brother Yin, did you come from another region of the divine world? I haven't left Xiaoguang City yet. What is the outside world like?" The young boy's eyes flickered with admiration. He yearned for Yin Nuoxing's deep and rich stories. He yearned for the latter's experiences and the world outside of Xiaoguang City. Every city is a miniature version of this world. Yin Nuoxing smiled and shook his head. His experience wasn't very high. Many of his insights came from ancient books and reading books. Reading books was one of his few hobbies. Hearing this, which was equivalent to admitting it, the excitement in Mu Qing's eyes intensified. He couldn't help but say, "No wonder I felt that Brother Yun and Sister Zian were very mysterious. It turns out that you've seen the world." The world. Was the Taiyuan Grand Assembly counted? Yin Nuoxing and Mu Qing looked at each other and smiled helplessly. Even if it was, they were just little brats. They weren't much older than Mu Qing. It was just that for some special reasons, they had been running around outside. Hence, they weren't used to this kind of academy life. Brother Lin. As they walked, Yin Nuoxing suddenly saw Mu Qing jump up in excitement. He waved vigorously in a certain direction, which made him look over as well. He saw a place packed with people. There were a few people sitting behind a table, and they were in a flurry. On the wall beside the stall, a young boy and a young girl were leaning against it. Their eyes were filled with smiles as they looked at the overcrowded stall. When they heard the sudden shout, the 2 of them turned their gazes. When they saw Mu Qing, they raised their hands and waved. When they saw the 2 people walking over with him, they were stunned. Yin Nuoxing's colorful eyes also looked at the 2 of them with some interest. These 2 people were really a match made in heaven. Their appearances were also quite extraordinary. The young man's eyes were slightly languid. His soft and slightly messy black hair was tied up with a blue butterfly hairband. His youthful and handsome face was a little thin. His clear facial features gave his face a gentle and soft feeling. His pitch-black eyes were bottomless, but they also revealed the innocence and carefreeness of a young man. Faint fiery patterns fell on his slender body, forming a faint halo around him. It was comfortable and beautiful, calm and gentle. This was Yin Nuoxing's first impression of him. However, the feeling in the bottom of his heart told him that this young man was a powerful person. This intuition that came from nowhere made him stunned. Then he chuckled in his heart. This young man probably had a lot of stories. The young girl beside him was slim and elegant. Her figure was slender and graceful. Under her blue dress, her slender waist outlined a moving curve. Her long black hair flowed down like a waterfall. Her clear, glass-like eyes made people feel the calmness in her heart when they looked at her. Tiny fragments of candlelight shone from the side, making the young girl's delicate face exceptionally beautiful. From the many eyes that were secretly looking at her, one could tell that this young girl already had such amazing charm. If she grew up, she would be even more amazing. While Yin Nuashing and Xian were sizing up the two of them were also sizing up the former. Although the former two of them had deliberately covered their faces, the temperament that was engraved in their bones could not be concealed. It was different from what others had described. They were not overbearing or condescending. What they had was a natural, distant, and ethereal aura. Gradually, the four of them stopped when they were less than 2 meters apart. Muqing also saw that the four of them had already met gazes. He tactfully cupped his hands at Yin Nuashing and Xian, then quietly retreated to the side. For pairs of eyes met in the air. There was only silence. Even the noise around them could not reach their ears. "Nice to meet you. I am Lin Sheng. This is my girlfriend, Yi Qinglian." The young man who called himself Lin Sheng slowly stepped forward and cupped his hands at the two of them. Seeing this, the young girl in blue also stepped forward and cupped her hands. Mei Mao was still sizing up the two of them. Yin Nuashing and Xian also cupped their hands and smiled. "Nice to meet you." After that, he gently took off his mask and hat. His appearance that was completely revealed caused the two of them to be stunned. Not only were they stunned when they saw Ziyan's appearance, but even though Yin Nuashing was wearing men's clothing and claimed to be a man, they were also stunned when they saw him. This person was much more beautiful than a woman. As for my real name, I can't say it because of some things. My surname is Yin. Yin as in by Yin. This is Xian. Yin Nuashing smiled. He did not know where his name had flown to or how far it had spread. It was better not to say it if he could. Hearing this, Lin Sheng and Yi Qinglian nodded to express their understanding. Everyone had their own little secrets. They had just met, so it was impossible to say it out loud. The two men and two women gently shook hands. Then, Lin Sheng smiled faintly and said, "Brother Yin, are you also interested in this new student society? We're just here for a stroll. We don't have any intention of joining any factions. We're already used to being alone." Yin Nuashing shook his head. He didn't know how many times he had said these words after entering the High Light Academy. After thinking for a while, he said, "Moreover, our positions. Yes, it's slightly awkward. Wherever we go, we'll accidentally step on landmines." "Haha, Brother Yin, are you talking about the Azure Cloud Pavilion? That Yin MO is known as a mission maniac. He has experienced countless killings. We didn't expect Brother Yin to go up against him," Lin Sheng said softly. When he mentioned Yin MO, some seriousness flashed across his pitch-black eyes. An expert of that level gave him an extremely great pressure. However, as long as he was given enough time, it was not impossible for him to surpass Yin Mo. Has it already spread? Hearing him say Yin Mo's name, Yin Nuashing was also stunned. Then he laughed bitterly. He didn't expect the news to spread so quickly. It hadn't even been half a day since the incident. Almost all the new students are paying attention to the matter between Brother Yun and Miss Z. Many of the older students are also following you. They want to see what earth-shattering things the first and second place of this batch of new students can do. After all, it's not something an ordinary person can do to snatch the top 40 spots of the Demon Rank Combat Strength ranking. Lin Sheng laughed softly. His eyes were filled with motivation as he looked at Yin Nuashing and Xian. It was as if he had set the two of them as his goals. "Oh, that's right. Xian is her name. Her surname is Xian." Yin Nuashing pointed at Xian, looked at him, and teased. Lin Sheng blinked his eyes in astonishment. Then he laughed bitterly. "You didn't say that." Yi Qinglian couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. "The two of us won't get involved in the matters of the first and second place of the new students. We'll let you guys deal with it. The matter of the demon rank was also an accident. We didn't expect it either. Otherwise, such a thing wouldn't have happened that day." Yin Nuashing laughed and said, "Won't get involved? Brother Yin, are you planning to endure for a while?" Hearing this, Lin Sheng was also stunned. He didn't know what Yin Nuashing meant by not getting involved. He subconsciously thought that Yin Nuashing was standing on the cusp of the storm and wanted to avoid it. Whoa. Yin Nuashing frowned, not knowing what to say. The two of us are very special existences. If we get involved too much in these matters, it will cause the system of the academy to lose balance. This is also the reason why we've always been outside of the group. Xian gently continued from the side. Then, she rolled her eyes and said, "When we entered the academy, you asked me to say this a few times, but I forgot." This? Yin Nuashing awkwardly scratched her head and laughed dryly. Seeing the two of them getting along so naturally, as if they were already familiar with each other's existence and had already integrated into their daily lives, Lin Sheng's eyes were filled with envy. He secretly glanced at Yi Qinglian. When the latter saw him looking over, her beautiful face blushed slightly and she pouted. They hadn't gotten along to that stage, yet Lin Sheng couldn't understand Xian's words. He couldn't understand what she meant by causing the system to lose balance. He also didn't know what she meant by special. Since he didn't understand something, he could only suppress it and wait for a chance in the future to take a look. "How is it? Have you formed your own club force?" Looking at the busy stall in the distance, Yin Nuashing also walked to the wall and casually leaned against it. She looked at Lin Sheng and Yi Qinglian. These two were also very outstanding. Being able to defeat a half-demon at the 9th level of the immortal rank was enough to prove some things. The two of them should also have some fame. If they formed a force, many people would join. Lin Sheng smiled and nodded. He also leaned against the wall and pointed to the nearest stall. Mu Qing was already busy inside. He smiled and said, "That's our place. It's basically finalized. About 500 people have been confirmed to join. They're all from the freshman area, and most of them are from Elder Jean Chen's team. As for the future, we'll see what happens next. I guess you guys don't care about anything, right?" Yin Nuashing smiled. Seeing the two of them standing outside and chatting, she guessed that they were also hands-off shopkeepers who had been captured by their forces to be mascots. Lin Sheng smiled bitterly and nodded. They were really captured to be signboards. The two of them only cared about improving their strength and didn't care about anything else. "What's the name?" Yin Nuashing suddenly asked. When Lin Sheng heard this, he chuckled. However, his eyes glanced at Yi Qinglian. He coughed dryly and said embarrassedly, "This was basically decided by me. It's called the Green Lotus Association. It's the green lotus that grows in the water, the one that grows out of the mud without being stained. However, no one has any objections." Green Lotus, Qinglian. Aren't these homophones about the same? Your thoughts are written on the surface. Yin Nuashing couldn't help but laugh when she heard this. When he heard this, Lin Sheng's handsome face turned slightly red. Even Yi Qinglian was stunned. It seemed that this fellow was using her name as if it was her private force. Hee, Qinglian has a good image. She's also the third-ranked goddess among the freshmen. It's my fault that my image isn't good enough. Lin Sheng scratched his head embarrassedly and smiled. Although he said that his image wasn't good enough, his appearance was also very handsome and pleasing to the eye. Third-ranked? Then what about the first and second place? Yin Nuashing blinked. When did he do this thing? Lin Sheng was stunned. Yi Qinglian's pretty face also changed slightly. The two of them looked at each other awkwardly before turning their gazes to Yin Nuashing and Xian. They pointed at them and laughed dryly. Miss Xian is second. Brother Yun is first. Puffed. When she heard this shocking news, Xian couldn't help but laugh out loud. She covered her red lips with one hand and supported herself against the wall with the other. She laughed so hard that her delicate body couldn't stop trembling. The laughter that leaked out from between her slender fingers also made Lin Sheng and Yi Qinglian feel a little awkward. There was really no end to this blunder. However, with Brother Yun's qualifications to compete for the goddess leaderboard, he probably wouldn't be able to escape first. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes fiercely. He was also used to this kind of thing. He wanted to open his mouth and scold a few words, but he couldn't find the person to scold. Could it be that he couldn't scold himself? Scold himself for being too flirtatious? He had a girl's voice and a girl's face. Other than a flat chest, he didn't have an Adam's apple. It would be strange if they could recognize him as a man. When a humanoid creature was 80% similar to a girl, most people would subconsciously treat it as a girl. Who would have thought that such a beautiful creature was actually a boy? Ugh! Yin Nuoxing covered his face with his palm and let out a low, drawn-out cry. His listless and weak appearance made Lin Sheng and Yi Qinglian's hearts ache. Why did this guy have a girl's face? This is the badge of our Green Lotus Society. Well, it's a green lotus. Lin Sheng took out an exquisite badge and handed it to Yin Nuoxing. Yin Nuoxing glanced at it. It was indeed just a lotus. However, after thinking about it carefully, his gaze swept past the two of them, and he had an idea. He smiled and said, "Wouldn't it be better to carve your images or representative objects on it?" Lin Sheng was slightly taken aback. He thought about it and nodded after a moment. He can indeed do that. However, he turned his gaze to Yi Qinglian. If she was unwilling, seeing him look over, Yi Qinglian rolled her eyes at him and said, "Do whatever you want." Upon hearing this, Lin Sheng smiled brightly, making Yin Nuoxing feel a little helpless. Would this guy end up being a henpecked husband? Brother Lin. Mu Qing, who was busy over there, jogged to Lin Sheng's side. He looked a little nervous and said something softly. Yin Nuoxing tactfully moved to the side and did not eavesdrop. After waiting for a few minutes with Xian at the side, Mu Qing jogged away and returned to the stall. Yin Nuoxing saw that Lin Sheng's expression was much calmer, as if he was thinking about something. Yi Qinglian was also whispering something to him. After waiting for a few more minutes, Yin Nuoxing saw the two of them walking over with smiles on their faces. He smiled and said, "It's not easy for you guys either. You even got into trouble by creating a force." You heard that?" Lin Sheng was stunned. He had not said anything yet. "I guessed." Yin Nuoxing shrugged and raised his chin. He said, "Since Mu Qing came to look for the two mascots, he obviously has something he can't solve or can't decide for you. The rest is easy to guess from your expressions. I won't say anything." Upon hearing this, Lin Sheng and Yi Qinglian were both stunned. They looked at each other. The former could not help but feel a little embarrassed. This was just a report. How could he have guessed so much? Sigh, among the freshmen, there's some grudges with some people. According to the seniors, the freshman banquet in a month's time is a test. I originally wanted to resolve the grudges during the test. I'm afraid it's not that simple. When Yin Nuoxing heard this, he fell silent and did not say anything. The four of them leaned against the wall quietly and looked at the square where people came and went. They all had different emotions. No matter how difficult it is, you have to think of a way to get through it. This is just a small hurdle for you guys, isn't it? Yin Nuoxing took a light breath, stood up straight, stretched, and said with a smile, "With your talent, you won't stop at this place. If you want to prove yourself, then release your fire in that activity that only belongs to the new students." After saying this, he smiled again and strolled away with Xian, leaving behind only a voice that quietly dissipated. "If you have any difficulties that you can't overcome, call for me. It's not impossible for me to lend you a hand." Chapter 628. In the dim light of the candlelight, the sea of people cast a large shadow on the ground. The shadows gathered together to form an extremely lively scene. After Yin Nuoxing said that, he pulled Xian and joined the bustling scene. Lin Sheng and Yi Qinglian, who were not far away, smiled at him and cupped their hands. What a strange person. After watching Yin Nuoxing and Xian disappear into the sea of people, Lin Sheng stretched and smiled faintly. It's a pity that he has no intention of joining our Green Lotus Society. Otherwise, we would have pulled him into our Green Lotus Society. He doesn't like trouble or noise. He's more like an old man. He's not as young and frivolous as you. It's as if he has already seen through it all. Mei Mao, Yi Qinglian, flapped her fan lightly and looked at Lin Sheng. I feel that he has a strong background. Perhaps he's from some powerful faction. Lin Sheng frowned slightly when he heard this. After a while, he laughed at her and said, Is he as strong as my Qinglian? Who's your? Yi Qinglian could not help but blush when she heard this. She rolled her eyes at him and said coquettishly, "It's hard to say. You can't judge a book by its cover. Although we've only met for a while, I can tell that he has at least 2 masks. This kind of person is either shrewd or has a strange personality." Mask. Doesn't he only have 1 mask on his face? And it's only half a mask. Lin Sheng was stunned. Idiot. I'm talking about the way he appears in front of others. Yi Qinglian looked at him speechlessly and sighed softly. Sigh. Lin Sheng still believed what she said. However, from the looks of it, he did not see anything special about Yanua planet. He still needed to observe quietly. No matter what, on the surface, he was still a person worth befriending. Well, let's not care about that. I still need to work hard for the freshman assessment in a month. Find some time to go into seclusion. It's time to cultivate that thing. With his hands on his hips, Lin Sheng let out a long sigh. He looked at Yi Qinglian and grinned, as if he was trying to please her. Tomorrow. It's too late today. Cultivation has to be done gradually. There's no point in being anxious. Yi Qinglian nodded. Yes, understood. Tomorrow? All right. Since we're both free, I'll definitely teach you whatever you want to learn. Yin Nuoxing was slightly stunned as he strolled around the square, filled with new students. A thoughtful expression flashed across his handsome face, but it only lasted for a moment before he nodded. He had already promised to teach her, but he didn't expect this girl to look forward to it so much. He felt a little embarrassed when he saw her sparkling eyes. Anything is fine. Little Star can arrange it. I'm not too sure what mystic skills and secret techniques you have. Just pick one that Little Star thinks is suitable. Xian smiled faintly. She wasn't too sure about the divine mystic skills. There was a rather powerful mystic skill in the divine evolution of the 5 elements, but with her strength, she had only unlocked less than 30% of it. It was fine to use it for sparring, but once she encountered an emergency, it would be a little difficult. She had a weak foundation and didn't have many trump cards, unlike Yin Nuoxing, who had endless methods at her disposal. Behind the academy is a huge mountain. Let's go there. Let's make things clear first. Divine mystic skills and secret techniques are already out of the scope of normal mystic skills. There's a high chance that they will fail. Once that happens, don't be greedy for the demonic aura that has already been mobilized. Quickly cut off the connection and expel it from your body. Yes. Xian listened very seriously and firmly engraved Yin Nuoxing's words in her mind. Of course, when you're familiar with it, this situation will slowly decrease. Later on, even if it fails, you can still forcefully use it. You'll only lose some of its power and it won't threaten your life. Yes. Also, what type of mystic skill do you want to learn? Weapon type? Close combat type? Energy impact type? Or movement type? Yin Nuoxing's colorful eyes stared at her delicate body and looked up and down for a while before asking. Xian thought for a while and thought of the dragon cry, sword that she was already familiar with. She nodded and said, sword type. When the 2-word sword type came out, Yin Nuoxing was also stunned for a moment. She staggered a few steps forward and asked in astonishment, why sword? The dragon cry sword that Little Star gave me. I'm used to it and have always carried it by my side. Seeing his strange, handsome face, Xian couldn't help but let out a charming laugh. She couldn't help but use a bit of strength in her lily-white hand that was holding his hand. Mei Mao shyly looked at him, causing him to smile bitterly. Was it really because of that sword? All right, sword type it is. Why don't you say that I have plenty of sword types? Shaking his head with a bitter smile, Yin Nuoxing didn't think of persuading her. The sword was the king of weapons. It could attack and defend, and it could advance and retreat at will. It was also because of this that the mystic arts for weapons like the sword were more difficult to cultivate compared to other weapons, because there were too many things to consider. However, after thinking about it carefully, those big and wide weapons didn't seem to be suitable for this girl. He thought that Xian would choose an energy-type mystic art. Early in the morning of the next day, when the sun had just emerged from the horizon, 2 shadows rapidly flew out from the freshman area. Bringing along a brilliant golden light, they disappeared in a flash. In the boundless 100,000 mountain range, the The lush greenery extended to the end of one's line of sight. It was like a boundless dark green ocean. Standing in the middle of it, a violent wind would blow and the sea of trees would sway. Huge green ocean waves that were several tens of meters tall would roll up and roar as they approached from afar. It was as if one was looking at a tsunami, shocking everyone. Above the sea of trees, a golden light suddenly flashed and disappeared. In an instant, it appeared on the horizon. After a few seconds, a storm descended, blowing the dark green sea of trees to the point that it was swaying left and right. The towering trees were almost broken. The mountain range here isn't connected to the millions of mountains in the ultimate plain region. There's a small section in the middle, but it's already so vast. The ultimate plain region is filled with mountains and forests. It's a paradise for magical and demonic beasts. I wonder how spectacular the terrain there is. The scenery below was stretched into countless thin lines, but relying on her special eyes and her own light element, Yun Nuashing could still see clearly. She couldn't help but sigh softly. Sweeping her gaze around, she estimated the distance from the academy in her heart. The first rays of the morning sun descended. In the sea of trees below, some low roars of magical beasts could be heard. Yun Nuashing pulled Xian, and the light element violently rushed out. However, it stopped in an instant. The violent wind only caught up after a while. Let's stay here. Cultivating a divine grade sword technique might cause some disturbances. Furthermore, you can't open the spatial barrier of Linghongjian. You need to accurately sense the elements in the world, the power of the world, and other forces that you can't control but exist. Yun Nuashing's eyes paused for a moment as he looked at the sea of trees below. His gaze landed on a mountain peak, and with a flash of his body, he brought Xian up to the mountain peak before stopping. After stopping and sensing that Xian had already adjusted his breathing to the most complete state, Yun Nuashing nodded and said, "I've already passed the Heavenly Chasm sword technique to you last night. However, I'll explain it to you again. The Heavenly Chasm sword art is actually a sword formation mysterious technique. There are a total of 6 sword formations, and the formations can only be used when fighting against many people. For example, in a battlefield, the formations are usually used by many people to share the energy and use it together. With tacit cooperation, the power of the formation can be multiplied. The Heavenly Chasm sword art is a sword formation controlled by one person. The chaotic sword formation uses sword chi to condense countless flying swords and quickly cut into the enemy's camp. The return to origin sword formation uses sword chi to seal an area, rendering all other energies within it useless. It can only be used for attack and defense, and can absorb the enemy's power. The 5-element sword formation is quite suitable for you. It uses 5 different energies to stimulate each other, and it has the power to burn mountains and boil seas. Apart from the first one, I haven't used the other 2 because there's no suitable situation. As for the remaining 3, they're the 3 with the greatest destructive force and the most energy consumption. World-killing formation, 12 huge immortal swords formed by sword chi, which could destroy the heavens and the earth. Sword flower spring rain. Compared to the others, this one is more weird and sudden. It could kill people silently. As for the last one, Heavenly Chasm formation, I only need to say one word. Gather all the sword chi that you've already used and turn it into the King of Swords, which would descend from the sky like a judgment. Xian listened modestly. Unlike the massive amount of information he had received last night, this was Yun Nuashing's cultivation experience. It was explained based on his understanding of the Heavenly Chasm sword technique. I don't think this is suitable for one-on-one combat. After thinking carefully for a while, Xian opened Mei Mao and looked at Yun Nuashing. These 6 sword formations were very beautiful and powerful. They were worthy of being called divine grade. However, sword formations were used on groups. Wouldn't it be limited if they were used on one-on-one combat? Sword arrays are able to maximize their effectiveness against a group of people, but against a single person, it's the most powerful. Think about it. If a sword array that can deal a huge amount of damage to a team of 100 people is used against a single person, Yin Nuoxing raised a finger to his lips and smiled mysteriously. Xian thought for a while and said, "He will bear the firepower that a group of 100 people should bear, and he will have nowhere to hide." Yin Nuoxing nodded in satisfaction. Then she clapped her hands and pointed at the forest below. "From today onwards, I will suppress the dragon cry, soared to the level of a demigod. You will carry on your back. It will follow you wherever you go. It will be inseparable. You will be familiar with it, and it will be familiar with you. Also, I just sense that most of the demonic beasts in the nearby forest are comparable to humans who have reached the 8th seal of the demigod rank. You can kill 10 demonic beasts in a day with the dragon cry sword. You can't use other methods, such as your 5-element sky formation." Yin Nuoxing joked. "Why isn't Little Star's cultivation so troublesome?" Xian heard and couldn't help but mutter. Yin Nuoxing shrugged and said, "I have the spiritual, godly body. I can't be more familiar with the weapons in my body. They are a part of my body. Naturally, it won't be so troublesome. This is the most powerful part of my body. I can cultivate whatever weapon I want. I don't even need to familiarize myself with the weapon. As long as I learn the corresponding mystic technique, I can use it accurately." Cheating, Xian rolled her eyes. Other people learned a weapon and used it to travel the world. He, on the other hand, could use whatever he wanted. He was proficient in all kinds of weapons. This kind of convenience was something she couldn't help but be envious of. All right, the 5 elements body is also an extremely powerful body. It is extremely sensitive to energy, especially the energy of the 5 elements. If you use it well, I guarantee that you will be completely familiar with your partner in 3 days. Then, you will be able to cultivate the heavenly chasm sword art. Yin Nuoxing smiled and rubbed her head. Her talent wasn't any worse than his. There was no reason why she couldn't learn it. "Yes, I believe you." Hearing that, Xian nodded with a smile. She waved her hand, and a faint dragon's roar pierced through the air. A 2-meter-long sword appeared. Xian Mei Mao glanced at it with a smile and grabbed it. She stroked the silver scabbard and said softly, "From today onwards, I'll be in your care." After that, she handed the dragon cry sword to Yin Nuoxing. The latter glanced at her and smiled faintly. The origin energy of the spiritual, godly body flowed through her hand. She gently brushed it across the dragon cry sword and returned it to Xian. This was only to suppress the output of energy, not its quality. That would be more strenuous, but it was enough. After receiving the dragon cry sword, Xian hung it on her slender waist. Afterwards, she smiled and clasped her hands at Yin Nuoxing in all seriousness. She smiled rather mischievously. "Teacher, please rest here. I'll be right back." After saying that, she twisted her body and directly rushed towards the forest below, leaving behind a beautiful back view, which made Yin Nuoxing a little stunned. "This girl, you're that relaxed?" Zai's indifferent voice rang out in his soul, making him sigh in exasperation. He sat down on the ground and said, "Xian has her own drive, and I don't want to stop her. I'll just be her shield. As for danger and whatnot, does little Yi really think that the demigod magical beasts nearby can pose any threat to Xian? Also, I've left energy on the dragon cry sword. Even if a demigod magical beast suddenly charges out, even if it's thousands of kilometers away, it'll only take a second for me to react and save her. Xian can still hold on." Listening to his analysis, Zai sighed speechlessly and said faintly, "Do as you please. Anyway, you're here, so there shouldn't be any problems. I'm just worried that if little Ziyin gets hurt, you'll be heartbroken and soften your heart that you've worked so hard to harden. You struggled for an entire night before deciding to let Ziyin cultivate. In the past, you've always protected her so tightly." Yin Nuoxing's heart skipped a beat when he was mercilessly exposed. His breathing quickened, and he rubbed his chest. He sighed and shook his head. "One day, everyone will be independent. No one can't live without another. It's just a matter of how much you care. How long can I protect Xian? 100 years? 1,000 years? Or forever? That girl doesn't want to hide under my protection forever. She wants a change. That day, she said very seriously that she wants to protect me. She's working hard for this. When I heard her say that she wants to protect me, I felt my heart throbbing in pain. Yin Nuoxing sighed deeply, shook his head, and said, "If there comes a day when I can't pick up the sword in my hand anymore, it'll be her turn to protect herself. Instead of carefully protecting her, it's better to let her have her own strength. Besides, she's also willing." The last sentence was said by Yun Nuoxing and Zai together. Zai had heard it many times and knew that it would end like this. Yes, that's true, but she's a girl. I don't want her to take on so much responsibility. In short, if you need anything, just call me. Xian, and I will be waiting in the soul. Zai nodded and said one last thing before falling silent. Yin Nuoxing nodded his chin and opened his evil spirit eye. His gaze passed through the countless trees and looked at the beautiful figure leaping through the forest. He sighed softly in his heart. Girl, you must be careful. Chapter 629. Thick dark clouds covered the entire sky. Occasionally, there would be lightning bolts that were a few feet thick, like silver dragons breaking through the dark clouds. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws, tearing the sky apart. A dazzling light shrouded the entire mountain range. In this extremely violent environment, even the creatures deep in the mountains did not dare to casually come out. They were all hiding in their caves or underground. Faint low roars could be heard being carried by the wind for miles, slowly spreading throughout the entire mountain range. The storm uprooted an entire huge tree and threw it down from the mountain peak. After a long time, it landed heavily on the mountainside beside the youth who was sitting cross-legged on a huge rock. The huge roar did not distract the youth. His consciousness was immersed in the array that was floating in front of him. In his hand, he was holding a simple silver scroll. In this place where thunder and lightning intersected, it flickered with silver light, as if the scroll was also releasing thunder and lightning. Rumble, a terrifying sound that caused the earth to tremble, came from the horizon. One after another, silver dragons roared and tore apart the shaky sky. Under the unceasing shaking of the sky, a crack suddenly appeared in the sky. The silver-white sky fell from the sky in an instant without any warning, covering the entire mountain range. The pitter-patter of rain soaked the mountain range, and a warm aura with the smell of mud slowly rose. Raising her head and looking at the sky that was covered by dark clouds and lightning, the blue-clothed young lady let out a soft sigh. Before the boundless raindrops fell, she extended her jade-like hand forward. An energy barrier slowly spread out until it enveloped the young man who was a few meters away. Only then did it stop. What followed was the continuous sound of raindrops hitting the barrier. Feeling the change in the illusion, the youth slowly opened his eyes. Looking at the world that was already covered by rain, he let out a long breath. The hands that were holding the silver scroll tightly clenched. He felt his heart tremble slightly. In this place where an extremely terrifying thunder and lightning could strike at any time, his heart was not as calm as it appeared on the surface. Thunder Prison Array. His hand held the silver scroll tightly. At this moment, the blue array in front of him was slowly spinning. It seemed to be affected by the increase in thunder and lightning in the air. On the surface of the array, there were several thick lightning bolts that flowed through it. Why did you pick such a windy and stormy weather? Is the lightning pool in the academy not enough? Seeing him open his eyes, Yi Qinglian also stretched lazily. A beautiful curve appeared under her blue clothes. Looking at the weather with strong winds and thunder, her willowy eyebrows slightly furrowed. The Academy's lightning pool is man-made. Although it is similar to real lightning, it lacks the power of heaven and earth. Only here can one better feel the power of lightning. Lin Sheng smiled. He looked at the silver scroll in his hand and said, The power of lightning released by the thunder prison formation depends on the power of lightning absorbed during cultivation. If it's true natural lightning, it should be very powerful. It might even reach the second rank of the demon rank. Maymao flapped her fan slightly. She raised her head and looked at the roaring silver dragon in the thick dark clouds. Maymao was a little worried. However, she nodded gently and said in a gentle voice, "Be careful." Lin Sheng grinned and slowly opened the silver scroll in his hand. He looked at the floating array in front of him. With a thought, he controlled the array to shrink back into the scroll. As the magic array entered the scroll, a blinding silver light suddenly burst forth from the scroll. Instantly, the thunder and lightning in the dark clouds seemed to be attracted. Waves of powerful silver-blue thunderbolts condensed into one and turned into a huge silver dragon that was at least 10 feet long. The dragon's shining eyes seemed to have intelligence. It stared at Lin Sheng below and suddenly roared. Then, it turned into a thick silver energy pillar and directly descended into the scroll in Lin Sheng's hand. The sudden shattering of the barrier shocked the two of them. Before they could react, the huge pillar of light had already poured down and enveloped Lin Sheng. The vast destructive power made him pale with fright. However, he reacted in an instant. The immortal chi and demonic chi in his body began to circulate with a whistling sound. They even carried a strange energy fluctuation as they enveloped and refined the thunderbolts that had recklessly barged in. Lin Sheng, seeing that Lin Sheng was enveloped by the huge pillar of lightning, Yi Qinglian's pretty face turned pale with fright. She stomped her feet on the ground and was about to rush into the pillar of light when she sensed that there was a tenacious life force in the pillar of lightning. Although it seemed particularly small in front of the might of heaven and earth, it was tenaciously resisting the lightning. This made her hurriedly stop in her tracks. Her bright eyes stared nervously at the silver-blue pillar of light. This strange phenomenon did not last for long before the silver-blue light pillar quietly disappeared. Lin Sheng, who was inside, took a few deep breaths when the lightning light pillar disappeared. Waves of numbness were transmitted from his body. He could not even hold onto the scroll as it fell to the ground. His body directly knelt on the ground. However, before he could kneel, a fragrant wind rushed into his arms and tightly supported his body that had lost control. Lin Sheng looked at the pretty face that was filled with worry and could not help but grin. He said, "It's fine, it's fine. It's just the power of lightning. It can't hurt me." Seeing him forcing himself to smile, Yi Qinglian could not help but roll her eyes at him. She helped him slowly sit down and casually asked, "Did you succeed?" "Yes, it wasn't as difficult as I imagined." Lin Sheng smiled as he leaned against the boulder that had not been shattered by the lightning beam. However, he wiped the cold sweat off his forehead with his palm. Fortunately, the scroll had absorbed 80% of the lightning energy for him. Otherwise, it would not have been as simple as his body being paralyzed. After sitting down and resting for a while, Lin Sheng originally wanted to see just how powerful the lightning prison formation was after absorbing the pure power of lightning. However, a shocking ripple of energy suddenly erupted, startling the two of them so much that their expressions changed slightly. That is, before he could finish speaking, he suddenly saw a few huge craters explode in the ground not far away. Subsequently, waves of milky white energy aura rushed into the sky from the ground and rapidly gathered in a direction in the distance. Along with it, the roaring silver dragon in the dark clouds was also grabbed. There was actually a sliver of human-like fear in the monstrous thunder, as if a great demon was in that direction. What a powerful energy fluctuation! Could it be that some strong person is cultivating here? Lin Sheng was also shocked by the sudden movement. His expression changed slightly as he hurriedly raised his head and looked at the mountain range in the distance. This energy fluctuation, it has the energy fluctuation of a god, but it doesn't have that kind of majestic feeling. Yi Qinglian was also surprised. "Let's go and take a look." A look of surprise flashed across Lin Sheng's face. He was very curious. "Yes, up to you." Yi Qinglian did not mind. Hearing this, Lin Sheng smiled faintly. His body shot out like an arrow. Behind him, Yi Qinglian also quickly followed. The evil spirit eyes dyed the area around 1 foot in dazzling colors. That was the embodiment of pushing the effect of the eyes to the extreme. They closely followed the beautiful figure that was constantly leaping in the forest and fighting with the demonic beast. After a long time, seeing that Xian had killed the demonic beast without any injuries, Yin Nuoxing let out a long sigh of relief. There seems to be no problem. It was also a demigod-level demonic beast, but Xian, who was holding the Dragoncry sword, was clearly much more relaxed than before. This was the power of a high-grade weapon. Yin Nuoxing also relied on the many powerful divine weapons that allowed him to challenge an Emperor God expert. If there's no problem, it's my turn. After observing for a while, Yin Nuoxing was also relieved. He flipped his palm and took out a jade bottle. He opened the bottle and poured out a red pill that was the size of a longan fruit. There was a dark red pattern and an emerald pattern on it, making it look very beautiful. This was the soul-forging and marrow-cleansing pill that the two of them had spent 12 million energy values and offended Yenamo to buy. Then next, let's see if this pill that has been strengthened by the energy of the glories will tree can give me a push. Twisting his neck, Yun Yaxing turned his gaze and looked at the distant horizon. Over there, dark clouds covered the sky, but where he was, the sky was clear. Looking at the blue sky, he flicked his finger and the pill in his hand fell into his mouth. He swallowed it without thinking. Wow, an immortal grade pill is eaten so casually. Seeing him eat the soul-forging and marrow-cleansing pill so casually, Z could not help but laugh bitterly. It seemed that this guy usually ate too many high-grade pills and was too lazy to care about anything. Whatever. Anyway, it's a spiritual divine physique. It doesn't matter if I'm in peak condition or not. Sure enough, just as Z thought, Yin Yaxing was too lazy to care about anything. After a sigh, he continued, "This is a single-element soul-forging and marrow-cleansing pill. Do you want me to worship it before eating it? I've already eaten a saint-grade pill, and it's refined from 8 elements. Xianyan has spoiled you." Hearing this, Z's cheeks could not help but twitch. This kid was holding onto a treasure mountain. It would be strange if he was so calculative. Yin Yaxing smiled and did not comment. When the pill entered his stomach, it turned into a huge amount of warm energy that surged through his body like a tide. He also relaxed his mind and allowed it to flow around his body. A warm current slowly condensed in the depths of his body, making him feel as if he was soaking in a hot spring. It was very comfortable. All the pores on his body opened up, and wisps of faint black gas were forced out of his body by the medicinal power. They were expelled from his body through his pores. From afar, it looked like Yin Yaxing was releasing a weak, demonic aura. Are there so many impurities? Yin Yaxing was a little surprised to see that the black airflow could be observed floating out of his body with his eyes. After the reconstruction of his body in the Rainbow Aurora Celestial Pond last time, it should have been close to perfection. He didn't expect there to be so many hidden impurities. When his body was being transformed by the warm energy, his soul also emitted a weak fluctuation. His soul power that had already reached a threshold actually gave him a signal that he was about to break through. It's really effective. Feeling that his soul power was running on its own without him controlling it, Yin Yaxing's handsome face was filled with joy. Although the immortal grade pill was very effective for the first 3 realms of the initial god tier, his body was a little special, and he himself was not sure if it had any effect. Now that he saw the medicinal power, he knew that he had underestimated some immortal grade pills. Perhaps it was because he had eaten too many immortal grade pills on a daily basis, so he did not take it seriously. The expanding soul power turned into a figure that looked exactly like him and gradually enlarged outside his body. Then, with a slight tremble, it turned into a huge soul power cocoon. It was transparent and enveloped Yin Nuoxing inside. The 6 paths wool between his eyebrows spun rapidly at this moment, and the 6 paths of reincarnation technique also acted on its own. Waves of soul power kept gathering, but there was always an invisible barrier that suppressed this growth. This caused the soul power that kept gathering to be blocked together. The gathering of soul power became more and more powerful, but the invisible barrier did not move at all. Yin Nuashing was also startled when he sensed this change within his soul. This soaring spiritual strength was quite large. It was so large that it caused him to be shocked. However, the barrier of the cultivation level was so tough that it exceeded his expectations. His soul, which had been nourished by the soul-tempering marrow-cleansing pill, was doing its best to grow and attack that invisible barrier. However, the unceasingly accumulating spiritual strength caused his soul to swell. This was a sign that his strength was overloaded. If this goes on, my soul power will explode before I can break through. My soul power will explode and turn into ashes. Thinking of a terrifying outcome, Yin Nuashing shuddered and laughed dryly. What kind of joke was this? Soul burning art reverse. Fiercely clenching his teeth, Yin Nuashing's hands formed a seal with lightning speed. Then, a bright red symbol appeared on the surface of his skin. But at this time, what was burning wasn't his soul force, but the power of his stars. By circulating the burning soul law in reverse, he was burning the power of his stars in order to obtain several times more soul force. At the same time, this soul force was much stronger and more destructive than normal. Feeling the rapid loss of soul power in his body, Yin Nuashing spat out a mouthful of hot air. The scarlet runes climbed up his handsome face, making him look extremely ferocious. His drooping right hand slowly drew an arc, then he clenched his fist. Rumble. Terrifying soul power gushed out like a tsunami, covering an area of a few thousand miles. Then, waves of golden energy rapidly surged in his body. That was the origin energy of the divine body. Following the flow of the golden energy, Yin Nuashing's body suddenly erupted with an extremely strong suction force. The heaven and earth energy, elemental energy, and spatial energy within 1,000 miles all surged towards him, condensing into a huge energy vortex outside his body. Suddenly, a milky white airflow that was 1,000 feet thick shot up from the ground, startling Yin Nuashing. That was a dragon vein, and this dragon vein is extremely huge. Otherwise, it wouldn't be spewing out such a large amount of dragon aura. It's perfect for cleansing one's body and soul. At this moment, Zai's face was also filled with shock. This dragon vein must be extremely huge to be able to spit out such a thick airflow. However, before she could finish her sentence, she saw that the ground within a few hundred meters and a few thousand meters suddenly exploded with holes. Huge streams of dragon vein chi soared into the sky and merged into the huge energy whirlpool, causing the two people from Yin Nua star to be stunned. In the distance, Xian, who was fighting with a demigod magical beast, was looking for an opportunity to give it a fatal blow. However, a milky white airflow suddenly shot up from the ground in front of her and collided directly with the magical beast, startling her. Her delicate body swayed, and she hurriedly left the place. She raised her head to look at the distant horizon and saw the huge energy vortex. There was a hint of surprise on her face, but she was relieved after sensing that it was Little Star's aura. She was not in a hurry to look for the magical beast. Instead, she stood on a tree branch and quietly stared at the energy vortex that was growing larger and larger. Mei Mao was a little nervous. They couldn't have dug out the ancient dragon vein, right? How can there be such a large amount of dragon aura? If this dragon vein was under a city, it would be able to turn that city into a holy land for cultivators. Yin Nuashing stared in shock at the dragon aura that was erupting like a fountain. In the end, he could no longer remain calm. He was extremely curious and wanted to rush underground to take a look. However, his soul was currently on the verge of breaking through, and his situation was quite dangerous. He did not dare to be distracted. He only glanced underground and hurriedly focused his mind. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.